Alongside me, David Leslie. David, cool suits, a topic of conversation up and down the pit lane, keeping the drivers cool in what's expected to be a very hot race indeed. And generally speaking, cool suit technology has stayed in the dark ages. None of them really seem to work, and these drivers are going to have to be very, very fit indeed to survive the temperatures.
Yes, some of the drivers are really going to struggle here this afternoon because it is just so warm out there. And as you say, this technology they've had now for cool suits has been around for a long time, but unfortunately it never seems to work very well. It always works when they set off, but usually about 5 laps into a stint it stops for whatever reason, either because the dry ice or whatever they put in there managed to be so cold that it's blocked the tubes that nothing actually happened, and you end up wearing, instead of a cool vest, you've got a plastic bag with lots of hot water inside it, so it makes life even worse. So 2 or 3 of the teams we know have managed to over the weekend fit some extra ducting onto the cars, whether it be on the side windows or on the roof or wherever, to try and get a little bit more air into it. We can see Jamie here putting his helmet on now. He's deciding it's obviously going to be very warm in there, not wearing a balaclava at all, but that little tube sticking out the front there will be connected to a water bottle of some description inside the car, so he can at least have a drink of something that will be cool when he starts, but how long it will stay cool, I'm not very sure. And I know from previous experience, drinking hot water inside a race car is not the best thing in the world.
Well, the Lister Storm second fastest in the Super Pole session, but in fact the 2 Lister Storms, number 1 and number 2, are the fastest 2 cars in the morning warm-up ahead of the 2 Car Sport Holland cars. We just saw the Labra competition machine of Christophe Bouchou. Here is Julian Bailey at the helm of car 2, and the little hose there on the left-hand side of the picture shows that he is using some kind of ducting through to channeling around inside his helmet to try and at least keep the brain within manageable temperature regions. Now here is something, as you said, some of the cars have sprouted cooling ducts overnight, and well, there's a Subaru scoop on the roof of this car, and that's not a surprise really, not actually off a Subaru, but we're so used to seeing them on their rally cars. This is the ProDrive Ferrari, first appearance on a racetrack of this car, and they've had their problems. They haven't done an awful lot of running, an awful lot of testing. They changed an engine overnight and did 1 installation lap with it this morning, found out that in fact something inside the car was fouling the cam belt, so they hope to have rectified that. But their first racing lap will be their full first lap at speed, A with full tanks and B with this new engine in, so it will be a voyage of discovery. David Richards, the ProDrive boss, on hand here. He was at the Manicourt circuit yesterday, and there you go, he is overseeing things. Of course, he's got his finger in so many pies. The Subaru ProDrive team, he is of course the guy behind the World Rally Championship coverage that we're seeing so much more of on Eurosport this season as well, and he's the man who's hoping to bring live coverage of World Rally Championships to our TV screens. Well, there's the front row of the grid with the Lister and the Car Sport Holland car, another Lister, another Viper on row 2, and the Ferrari and the second Car Sport Holland car on row 3. The Ferrari on pole in NGT ahead of the Orlando Rodolfi car 69. The 2 Art Engineering cars, both in the top half dozen. So too the Perspective Racing car, the orange and black machine, and one of the Labra competition Porsches. And those are the top 12, 6 from each of the 2 classes here that go into Super Pole. They start as the first 12 cars on the grid, with the rest of the GT and then NGT field stretching out behind them. And a couple of newcomers to talk about before we get underway. First of all, we've seen the ProDrive Ferrari, and secondly, the long-awaited arrival of the Lamborghini Diablo. That is here as well. And there is a new Hungarian-entered GT class Porsche, which is, like most of the GT class Porsches, struggling a little bit in terms of pace, not just against the GT cars, but also against the NGT cars. Porsche's GT2 car has not had any seriously factory-based development for some 4 or 5 years now, and is really starting to pay the cost. Onboard cameras with Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Lister, with Mike Hazemans in the Car Sport Holland car, as Tim Sugden's car is there at the pit lane, waiting to start from the back of the field as they've all gone by. Now, I'm not quite sure why Tim is starting there. He's obviously been caught in the pit lane as it closed, perhaps making a change to the car or change to the tyres, something like that, during the warm-up or during the run round onto the grid. Now, the white red and blue car you can see there on pole position, that is a Carsport Holland car. Get used to it because they've got a new sponsor on board with that car. That's the Mike Hazeman's car that he shares with Jeroen Bleekemolen, and that car on pole position, red, white and blue. I'm bound to misidentify it as something else during the course of the race. Just mentally make a note to say, you idiot, it's actually the Carsport Holland car. So they start on pole position. The other one's still orange predominantly, so at least you'll be able to recognise that one easily. But it's the Route 66 car of Mike Hazeman's that leads the field away from pole position. And David, having seen this track now at first hand, it's a very tight and twisty track in a lot of places. These big cars, within the first half dozen laps, when they get into the tighter traffic, the slower cars, it's going to be tough for them to make their way through back markers, isn't it?
It's going to be very tough indeed, because the circuit is probably one of the tightest going to visit all year long. It's a long circuit, yes, at 3.9 kilometres, but it just twists from one side to the other all the time. And some of the cambers on the corners are much bigger than what the actual TV shows you. So once they get going and they get some heat into their tyres, one or two people spread a bit of gravel around the circuit because of being off here and there. It's going to become very, very slippy indeed. With the weight of these cars going through here, we could see a few people fall off, a few spins later on. And with the heat that we've got again this afternoon, we mentioned before, the drivers are going to get very tired very quickly inside those cars. And that again will add to the fact there'll be a few mistakes made by probably some of the less professional drivers.
Well, one of the cars, in fact, probably the car that the locals will be following is the car of Tamas Ilias there. You see the number 21 machine, the GLPK Viper. He is the, I think, sole Hungarian representative in the championship on a regular basis. Of course, we've also got this GT2 Porsche, car number 29, which is a Hungarian entered car with two Hungarian drivers, and so the locals will be watching that with interest as well. The Gammon car finally making its appearance with its Chinese driver lineup, and there you see the number 29 Bovi Motorsports Porsche. That's a bright yellow car that you'll see towards the tail of the grid. Ahead, in fact, of Franz and Nico Wieth's Ferrari, the number 28 car, which is a sort of darker red, more of a blood red than the current sort of orangey Marlboro red that is Ferrari's version of the Ferrari Rosso, and that's the colour sported not only by Gabriele Raffinelli's Ferraris, which are not here this weekend, but also by the ProDrive car. The Wieth car is the much more traditional sort of 50s and 60s deep red Ferrari Rosso. So the cars coming round then along this 3.9 kilometre lap, a very long lap, as David says, and some places a pretty high-speed circuit, but it does tend to be a little bit of a one-line racetrack for a lot of it. It's quite tight and quite technical, and as we've seen so many years, of course, from Formula One Grand Prix, very hard indeed to pass. The cars coming around to the grid, being led by Mike Hazeman's, the pole sitter. Eurosport live for round 6 of the FIA GT Championship at the Hungaroring. Ready to go racing. The safety cars leading the cars round for the final warm-up lap. On pole position, Mike Hazeman's in the Carsport Holland Viper. Alongside him, Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Lister Storm. Third place, Christophe Bouchou's Labra Viper. Fourth place on the grid, the other Lister of Julian Bailey. They're all in a neat 2x2 formation, and they should get the green lights this time round. Roland Brunserrider, the race controller, will like the look of this formation. 126 laps or 3 hours, whichever occurs faster. And problem for Jamie Campbell-Walter, not getting away at all. Julian Bailey squeezes by him. And look at the Ferrari go down the inside. Starting the car, Alain Menu, former British Touring Car champion, puts his car down the inside of the Labra Viper. And cold tyres at the beginning of the race means he runs out of a little bit of steam, but I'm immediately worried about Jamie Campbell-Walter, who was on the outside of the front row of the grid and just didn't seem to be coming round the last couple of corners quickly at all, and has immediately dropped down the order now. Whether he's hoping to preserve his tyres from excessive wear in the opening lap or so, I don't know. He did rather joke that they were going to triple stint their Michelin tyres, and I said I would mention that on air and then call him a liar when they didn't. But out front anyway, Mike Hazeman's and Christophe Bouchou with Alain Menu in third place. And David, a great sight and great sounds for the spectators with all these different cars and different engines thundering around the Hungaroring.
It is now. They've got such a variety of all the different cars, but you can see further back the blue and yellow Paul Belmondo cars there, trying to come back up through the NGT cars who started in front of them after the Super Pole. So they've got a few meters to catch up before they can get to the back of this pile at the front here of the GT cars. But Jamie Campbell-Walter, I think he was simply fast asleep when he came to that start. He really wasn't switched on at all, and all the cars behind him were, and he's just left himself with a bit of work to do.
I'm very surprised that he would be asleep, because he was behind the pace cars. I mean, it's not as if there was any indication of anything untoward happening as they pulled into the pit lane. I have to say, I think there might be a little bit more to it than that. But as you say, working their way past the NGT pole car you saw there, the 62 Ferrari, are the faster GT cars, the Vipers. But in fact, the pole-sitting Ferrari is not the best of the NGT cars, because coming across the line, leading that class, is Fabio Bobini, the blue and white Porsche on the right-hand side, with Jean-Pierre Jarier going past him. Then the car that was second quickest, which is Austrian driver Philippe Pater. Now Julian Bailey goes down inside Alain Menu as we ride on board with Jamie Campbell-Walter, who's been passed by two of the Belmondo cars as well, both of them. So, or was that? No, it was the Carsport Holland car in front of him, wasn't it? Looked very yellow from the onboard camera. This weekend, the onboard cameras have got a sort of screening filter on them to try and balance the bright sunshine outside, or it was before the start of the race anyway, with the dark inside the car. It's getting a little bit overcast here, but temperatures are expected to stay hovering around the 28 to 30 degree mark as they were yesterday. And in Fahrenheit, of course, that's something well up into the high 80s in centigrade. Luckily, our air conditioning unit in the cabin seems to be working very nicely indeed, so we're nicely poised for a good weekend. But out front, these two Vipers, David, despite the fact that the Labra car has got, I wonder if it was tyres that stopped Tim Sugden earlier on, because he's obviously been caught in the pits, but come back into the pits now at the end of the first lap for a tyre change as well. Maybe they are having problems with that car that they haven't managed to sort out yet.
These two Vipers are going away at the front. They're very, very quick indeed. And we have to remember the Chirot Viper in second place is carrying something like 90 kilos of success ballast. So that car, they've complained bitterly, the drivers, about how much faster everybody else is and how much they're struggling. But when you see them on the actual race circuit, they're not struggling at all. They're there in second place. They've got a very good second place, hanging onto the back of the Mike Hilsman's car. The Hazelman's car is always at the start of these races right at the front, and it usually tends to lead either until it has a problem, mechanical problem, or something else in the pits or whatever. But you certainly can't fault the Chirot car, because with all that weight, still there in a very good second place.
Well, Julian Bailey in third place in the list of being left behind by those guys. Now, we just saw a quick shot of what I think was one of the pair of Labra competition Porsches off on the side of the track. I'm now going to try and fiddle with our timing screen. No, we don't have page 2 of it, so I can't tell you who that would have been. Bouchou, again, despite that weight, is still pressing on. And it may well have been the Jean-Luc Chirot and André Arle car, because we've still got the number 50 machine, Patrice Gousselard, which is generally the faster of the pair of them, shown on the timing screens after 2 laps. And there is Julian Bailey in third place. Little day-glow orange markers on the wing mirrors, and particularly noticeable around the front of the splitter. Now down into the first corner, Alain Menu on the left in the Ferrari. Goes in nice and deep, doesn't he? I wonder if he crossed the blend line. I don't think so. Labra competition Viper goes around the outside. Then Bailey inside Sebastian Bleekemolen in the number 4 car. Jamie Campbell-Walter, who should have been realistically second there, being dropped down the order. Well, now we know that the Ferrari has done no full tanks running at all at the moment, so they're very much into territory they've never seen before there in that 4th place group. 4th place currently Sebastian Bleekemolen, car 4, then Alain Menu 5th, Jamie Campbell-Walter 6th, Jean-Pierre Jarier right with them in 7th place, then a 2-second gap back to Boris de Richebourg in the best place of the Belmondo Vipers, who are still trying to work their way through the NGT class. There is de Richebourg at the back of that shot, and it seems to me, David, that Jamie is now happy with his rate of progress and is shaping up to try and make a pass on Menu's Ferrari somewhere.
Yeah, he looks as though he's finally decided he's got through the first couple of laps and made no mistakes and wants to move forward. He's got the headlights switched on now to try and phase the guy in front. Exactly how that'll work, I'm not sure, because trying to face somebody like Alan Menyu is going to be extremely difficult.
He doesn't get faced by much, does he?
Not at all. But right behind them too is the Jarrier Viper. Now that's really good, because they started well back, remember, and they weren't in the Super Pole, so they were starting quite a bit further back there, and they've managed to get that car right up there. They were actually started beside the Belmondo car, the Richerberg car, but they've managed to make better use of the start and got themselves up there before the Belmondo car did. And
Great,
they're really hassling the back of the
They certainly are, giving these guys plenty of things to think about. Great onboard shots with the Ferrari. Can't see much other than Alan Menyu's helmet in the rearview mirror, but if you were having his viewpoint, you'd be able to see an awful lot of black and those multicoloured stress simulated marks on the top of the Lister roof, because Jamie Campbell-Walter's all over the back of him. But blimey, Charlie, look at the speed of the Ferrari in a straight line. That is impressive horsepower, David Leslie.
It is. They've come here with this new car. They've done some testing before they arrived. They would like to have done a little bit more, but because of various problems, when they first wanted to turn up with the car, they couldn't, because it wasn't quite legal, and they've had to go away and change it to the satisfaction of the organisers. And now they've come out fairly untried and tested, and while they've got fantastic power, we've just seen on the straight, they certainly have got a lot more work to do with the bit around the corners, because once they start on the corners, then immediately the Lister's straight there and all over the back of the car like a rush, really.
Well, let's ride with Jamie Campbell-Walter for a moment and follow the Ferrari down into this tight right and left chicane, and taking a big bite of the curbs there, Alan Menyu. Little bit of a wobble there coming off as Jamie gets the power on. Now you still coming down here at this stage, down into the bowl, and again the TV really doesn't show what a climbing and diving racetrack this is. I mean, this is no Spa-Francorchamps in terms of elevation change, but still in the rolling hillside outside of Budapest, you do find that a lot of these are blind brows when you're sitting in a race car. The driver's head you can see down halfway down this picture, and so very much sort of unseen turning points. You have to know where you're going, and Jamie is all over the back of the Ferrari. Now this is the critical uphill entry onto the straight, and when you get in behind the Ferrari there, look, Jamie I think almost had to back off the throttle for a fraction to avoid ramming the back of the Ferrari, and meanwhile Menyu on the power, and yeah, cheerio, bye-bye. Fifth gear, fourth, down to third. You can see the little indicator inside the steering wheel, and if you've got really sharp eyesight or a big TV, you can probably read the revs that he's pulling as well. Third gear all the way through here, down to second here, David, I think, and again, very off camber, very easy to spin the car out there. It doesn't look it, but the camber not working for you at all, and again, by the time they get out of turn two, all over the back of the Ferrari. So great camera shots there. Incidentally, just about the speed of the Jarrier car, they were actually fifth quickest in the morning warm-up, the number 9 Viper, 1:40.4 their best time, just a second off the pace of the Lister Storms, and the Listers were only 0.03 of a second apart, but they were a quarter of a second quicker than anyone else, as Jamie Campbell-Walter does get Alan Menyu under braking into that tight back chicane, where he'd shaped up to make the move a couple of times before. As I said, the Ferrari has never run on full tanks, and certainly not in race traffic, so this is very much lap 5 of 5 new laps of discovery for Alan Menyu and the Pro Drive team. But again, doing a sterling job there. He will obviously fight all the way for every position he can.
It looks like they're going to have a very hard job inside that car, because it's obviously not as confident around the corners as some of the other cars. It's fairly new, because you can see the wing mirrors hanging off. They obviously didn't screw that on quite as well as it could have done. It's flapping about on the right-hand side of the Ferrari there. But they've got a lot of hard work to do, and he's going to fight that car through the corners. So everyone in this race is suffering from heat. It looks like the people inside the red Ferrari are going to be suffering a little bit more, having to work that bit extra hard because of the inability to get it round the corners at this moment in time.
Number 12 car behind Jarrier is Boris Richerberg. They're 7th and 8th. The two French drivers, both of them in these Chrysler Vipers. And the Belmondo team disappointed with their qualifying performance, but racing a lot stronger. Well, while David reads his fan mail. Let's have a look at this replay as Jamie Campbell-Walter comes down inside Alain Menu. Great shot as Campbell-Walter puts in the move in one of really only two realistic passing places. Now, David Leslie has been, he's come into the back of the commentary booth and has been handed a bit of fan mail, so David's going to have a bit of a read. But again, replay from on board with Jamie. Down the inside. Yeah, he really had to take a run at the Ferrari. Menu saw him coming, gave him plenty of room. He wasn't going to fight that one. He knew it was inevitable. And now Campbell-Walter right on the tail of Sebastian Bleekemolen. So Campbell-Walter really now finding some speed from the Lister Storm. And Jamie will be racing, of course, this weekend with Tom Coronel. Next race, Coronel is unavailable. He's got other commitments that were signed and sealed before the Lister deal came his way. And so next race, Jamie will be joined by Mike Jordan, who British fans will know not only as a former Porsche Cup champion, but also a TVR Tuscan champion and the current partner with Dave Warnock of the British GT Championship Lister Storm. And they have had 5 wins so far in the British Championship with the Lister, including a blinding one just last weekend at Castle Combe. So it'll be great to see Mike Jordan and how he deals with the international competition. And there'll be an awful lot more GT cars when he comes to the FIA series than he's used to in Great Britain. So Jamie Campbell-Walter pushing on now. Don't forget, if you want to send us questions or answers, we are the car guys at Eurosport.com. Just saw that a 10-second penalty has been given to the number 19 car, and that is Michael Trunk's Lamborghini, the Lamborghini Diablo. Obviously lacking a little bit in pace during qualifying, and tried to make up a fraction of that at the start. Now we've seen that in the Formula Renault race here yesterday, that the officials are very good at picking up jump starts. So the Lamborghini, which is currently well outside the top 20, will be coming into the pits. We also saw one of the Ferraris, that's the 63 car, and that is Andrea Gavagnati in the JMB Ferrari. That's the second of the Ferraris. Dave Richard in the Pro Dive pits there, talking to Alain Menu's wife, watching the progress of the race on Eurosport in their pit lane garage. And David, Jamie now really stoked up and pretty much as fast as anybody else. His last lap, a 1:40.031, the fastest lap of the race so far.
Yes, he's obviously got his head down. He got past that Ferrari, and he didn't take very long before he caught the Bleekemolen Viper in front of him there. But now he's caught it, he's finding it a little more difficult to get past, just as he did with the Ferrari. He had to sit there for a little while, but he is really crawling all over the back of it, diving down the inside. There we are. He's got the move he wanted. In the lap and a half that he got past the Ferrari, he pulled away about 3 seconds, and I think he's got to do the same thing here now. Once he's past this Bleekemolen car, now he's got to get his head down. The next man in front of him is his teammate, Julian Bailey, with the other Lister. But that's managed to pull away some 11 seconds ahead of where Jamie is now. So he's lost a lot of time trying to get past these other GT cars at the beginning of the race. Having not been what I think is terribly switched on at the start of the race, and managed to lose some time there for whatever reason.
Well, I'm going to have a word with him, because having said that the Hungaroring is almost impossible to pass at, and that the almost sole overtaking opportunity is at the first corner at the end of the straight, he's now proved that the back chicane and indeed the second corner are possible overtaking places if you've got a Lister Storm. So we'll have to have a word with him, because that's not exactly running according to the script. The Harbinger racing car of Sylvain Noël in the pits as well. Large number of pit callers so early in the race. The Ferrari has gone back out. For what reason it stopped, we're yet to find out. But Sylvain Noël's car, well, they've put fuel in it. It can't surely have run out this early, but apart from that, no idea what's going on. You're looking at your race leader, Mike Hazelman's 9 laps in. He's got a 3-second advantage over Christophe Bouchou. David, we've seen that this car is very quick indeed, particularly at the start of the races. And now no sign of Bouchou in the camera shots. He's just driving away from him, but soon coming into slower traffic, and that may make a difference. Bouchou being dusted up by Julian Bailey in the background there, so might yet see a change for second place. Very little at all, just 0.2 of a second between them as they came across the line, and Bailey is very much looking for a way past. I don't think Bouchou will be quite so easy to pass as Alain Menu was, gentlemanly with Jamie Campbell-Walter. I think this is going to be a very tough race indeed for Julian. try and get past the Labra car.
You have to remember that these two cars are... oh, that was a Ferrari set the wrong way around.
That was, I think that was the 28 car it was, France and Nico Wiet's machine, and a very quick cut to the onboard camera just to show how little room there was for the leader to come through there. Right, carry on with your point.
What I was saying about the Chiro Viper and the Lister car, these are the two teams that are vying for winning the championship, and there's a lot of, shall we say, I wouldn't say fighting, discussions and hard work going on to try and beat each other out there. And so at no point during this race are either of these two teams going to give way to each other. So Julian, I'm afraid, is going to find it very hard to get past the Viper in front of him.
Well, the good thing for Jamie Campbell-Walter is that the harder Julian attacks Bouchou, the worse Bouchou's tyres are going to be. Whereas if Jamie can get a good run in clean traffic, and yes, the second Harbinger Racing Porsche nearly moving over on Julian Bailey there. Didn't see the Viper coming really, sort of was aware of it, but certainly had no idea there was anything behind. And I think Julian there would have been pulling out anyway to have a long run down the front straight, but managed to get the job done. So in the shortened distance that he had, but that was a close miss for Julian Bailey, courtesy of the very much slower NGT car not bothering to check his mirrors at any stage. Well, having now had that fright, hopefully he should be a little better when the rest get to him. So Hazelman's leading, Bailey second, Bouchou now in third place. And classic Hungaroring move, David.
Yeah, that was the one place that we said at the beginning of the programme where most of the overtaking will actually take part. If you've got two cars similar speed down the straight, you can slipstream the car in front of you, get to the end and just dive down the inside. That's the ideal place to get past. He managed to do that. He made it look an awful lot easier than what I had just said about 30 seconds earlier that it actually would be. But those two cars, same speed down there, unlike the Jamie Campbell-Walter when he was trying to pass a Ferrari. When he came onto the straight, the Ferrari just simply walked away and left him. So he found that as not one of those places he could do an overtaking maneuver.
Well, there's the 28 car that we saw spinning earlier on. Nico Wiet, the starting driver, shares it with his father France, and they're clearly worried that he's got some handling deficiency, probably courtesy of the car not being entirely screwed together properly. It certainly looked as though they were checking for worn steering joints or something in the suspension uprights. So 11 laps in then, and look at the gap Mike Hasemans has over Julian Bailey. But Bailey starting to pull away from Christophe Bouchou across the line, already a second clear of him. Jamie Campbell-Walter in fourth place. And then the number 4 car, Sebastian Bleekemolen, starting that. He'll hand that over to Father Michael. Sixth place is Alain Menu in the Pro Drive Ferrari. Jean-Pierre Jarier still very close to him in 7th. Welcome back to Budapest. We're live, round 6 of the FIA GT Championship. 33 minutes remain. Mike Hasemans leading the race in the Car Sport Holland Viper. It has been right at the front ever since they started from pole position. They've lost the lead a couple of times during the pit stops. And that was largely as a result of them staying with their fuel strategy and not stopping under yellows. The car that led was Anthony Kumpen's car, and that has yet to stop. 33 minutes remaining. The Car Sport car has done 2 stops, so too has Christophe Bouchou in third place. Anthony Kumpen, who took over from Didier Defourny in that car, has yet to make a second stop, and I still believe he will probably have to, but now with half an hour remaining, I'm sure they will push it as far towards the end as they possibly can to try and stay out of the clutches of Bouchou right to the very end. Now, I had a couple more emails about drivers overheating. We've heard all the drivers saying how hot it is, how tough it is in these cars. Paul Lomax says that his favourite tip when he's racing, and he's raced a few hot cars, including Renault Alpine turbos, and he's also racing in the Clio V6 trophy. He said, boy, those are boilers, with, unlike the Viper, the engine right by your feet. He said he's got that right behind his ears. But what he does is take one of those ice pack things that you normally have in a cooler box when you take your beer or your picnic. He says putting it in the freezer, then stick it down your back. And he said then at least when it cools down, it doesn't melt and suddenly become hot or stop working. It's always icy. Into the pits now comes the 11 car, and that's the, oh, it's not, no, it's the Belmondo car again. In 6th place, a lap down. That looked like a very wide entry into the pit lane. I wonder if he's got a more fundamental problem of some kind. Anyway, this car has made umpteen stops. This has already made, well, it's already made 2 stops, and this is sort of out of contention effectively as it comes in for stop number 3.
That idea you're saying about putting some ice down your back, I remember many years ago driving a car which had the ventilation blocked on it when I first went out, and it got very warm inside there, and having been resuscitated to go back into it, we didn't have that facility. What we did have was some food in the back that we're cooking for various people, so we dived into the freezer, got out a pack of frozen peas, stuffed it down the inside of the race suit, and went back out in the car with that down there to try and keep me as cool as possible for quite some time. So sometimes you can use what you can get hold of rather than something pre-planned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly for anybody club racing or in national racing who's thinking about sort of finding a cool suit or something, then a little freezer pack will probably work just as well. And on the subject of cool suits, Andy Paul saying, you know, what about air conditioning? It's a number of the World Rally cars used it recently, and surely it should work on a sports car. Yes, absolutely it should. And there's no reason at all why rally cars and sports cars cannot have proper cooling systems for the drivers. If we can keep men alive in absolute zero in outer space, then we can certainly keep them alive in a race car, even if it is traveling at 170 miles an hour. The real thing is that nobody has actually seriously developed the technology properly, and that's the simple fact of the matter. They're all a bit Heath Robinson, and the general fact of the matter is, if you put your car together as shoddily as you put together the cool suit systems, it would never get to the end of practice, never mind the start of the race. And you know, it just takes one team or one company to actually develop a proper, reliable working system that's light enough to make it justifiable, and the sustained performance of a driver over a 1-hour stint in debilitating temperatures will more than offset whatever power it takes from the engine and whatever extra weight it adds to the system.
I've got to disagree with you on that one.
I knew you would. Excellent.
I know how much power air conditioning takes. If you've got air conditioning on your road car and you switch it on, you can actually suddenly realise that your revs disappear down by about 100, 150 revs. So it takes a lot of power to drive air conditioning in it. And racing is all about going quickly. It's not about looking after the driver and making sure he's nice and cool. It's about making sure you can win the race as quickly as possible. On top of the fact it takes so much power, it is also quite heavy. And being heavy, then that's weight to carry. And these cars always try and build them to run at the absolute minimum weight. So you've got 2 problems there. One is a weight problem and one is the power problem. So for those 2 reasons, it's much easier to tell the driver to go and visit the gym and do a few more press-ups and things than it is to put all that equipment into a race car.
This is Jean-Pierre Jarier, just freshly out of the pits, looking down the inside and not finding the gap he was hoping for there with the 21 car. And that's a mistake by Jarier and poor old Thomas Ilias off the road there as well, but Jarier seems to have sort of recovered his composure a little bit. Jarier was in 9th place, I think, now down to 11th as a result of that, and they're good early starts. They're now 2 laps down, so that car not really having the strongest of runs. But, well, I knew as a driver, David, you wouldn't want anything that takes away even one of your horsepower or adds even 1/8 of a kilo to the car. However, I still say that you would perform better at the end of an hour in these temperatures if you had 10 horsepower less and 20 kilos extra in the car than if you didn't. And of course, it doesn't have to be run off the engine. You can run it with electricity, just like you do the power steering in Formula 1 cars. But we'll draw a veil over that and carry on. Correspondent from Holland, Klaas Scheppers, sorry for the mispronunciation, Klaas, said, why haven't we started this at 6 o'clock in the evening when it's not so hot? It'll still be light for 3 hours, and everybody will be able to watch the Grand Prix. Well, quite frankly, anybody that wants to watch 2 brothers and knock 7 bells out of each other and nothing else happen for the next hour and a half is more than welcome. They can always come back and watch the proper racing once the Grand Prix is finished. Oh dear, and Tim Sugden and Steve O'Rourke's car spins. They're in 18th place. Tim started the car, Steve's done the middle stint, and Tim, I'm sure perhaps at this late stage in the race, drivers getting tired and tyres and cars getting tired. Still a lot of traffic out there, and all the more easy to make mistakes. Well, Paul Belmondo's in the pits. Let's try and catch up with him now.
Paul, that's your 3rd stop in the pits. You told me that you've lost a wheel.
Yeah, in fact, when I went out, I felt a vibration straight away. I said it to the radio. They said maybe it's a tire that's not balanced. I think it was just the wheel that was not well tied and went off after 25 laps.
But Anthony in the other car, you think that he'll be able to last on the tank of fuel that he's got in second place?
Well, this is our strategy, so we'll see if we make it or not. They're running low revs, try to do it. We'll see if they do it or not.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Well, I did say when he came into the pits, I thought he ran very wide indeed in the right-hand corner, and so maybe it was that front left that was coming loose on the car. And the strategy for Kumpen, well, I guess it's kind of plug on and hope, really, isn't it now?
They're starting to struggle a little bit. They certainly had a fairly good lead over the number 7 Bushu car, but unfortunately that's disappearing very, very quickly at this moment in time. Whether they can hang on to third, I very much doubt it. Hang on to second at the moment, I very much doubt it. Whether they can hang on to third or not, I'm not sure, but certainly they shouldn't drop any further down than fourth. The Kumpen car should they continue to go round. At the moment, something like 4 seconds a lap slower than the quicker cars around it.
Well, they're guaranteed to lose at least a minute if they come into the pits. That's the one certain factor there, isn't it? So they know if they come in for fuel, which they could probably usefully do, they would guaranteed to drop down to something like 4th place. The big question there is whether they could ever get it back. And of course, it's always preferable. I mean, you know, it's entirely understandable in the driver and the team to want to stay out there, because who knows? Nobody expected the first safety car. Who knows what could happen in the next 25 minutes? Anything, nothing. But there's no point in coming in before you've lost the gamble, so they're going to stay out. And staying out too, Mike Hazeman's 86 laps. Should be another 40 to go to the maximum race distance, but the 3-hour cut-off mark will come in first. Gabriele Tosi from Italy wanted to know about Kurt Molliken's Porsche 996 Turbo. Remember, this was the effectively GT3R Turbo, which was running in the GC class at Zolder. He said, any signs of that car reappearing? Well, so far, no. It's all gone rather quiet on the 996 Turbo front. There are a couple being tried in Britain, and they have been really not very effective either. I think it's one thing to buy your Porsche from Porsche and get the keys, stick them in the ignition and go off and drive it, and then, you know, fine-tune it. It's entirely a different thing to completely re-engineer what is obviously a very tolerably engineered car in the first place to take a turbocharge and try and oomph the boost up. The other thing, of course, is that the 911 GT3R uses relatively narrow tyres. The rear tyre on the GT3R is only the same width as a front tyre on the GT2 Porsche. And the front tyres on the GT3 are much narrower because it's got a much more aerodynamic shape. It's more slippery, hasn't got the room under the arches for those tyres, and so they have smaller tyres. And again, trying to up-engineer those and to modify the bodywork to fit, and then deal with all the turbulence and lack of cooling that probably ensues, and all of the other stuff that happens. Well, you know, there's an awful lot to deal with. 77 car of Jürgen von Gartzen in the pits. Peter Fox running like a demon. I just watched him running past the FIA's official photographer. But where on earth is he going to? Because he's hidden by the monitor, von Gartzen. Peter arrives just as the car storms off. So that was a 50-meter dash with 3 heavy cameras, I'm afraid, for no avail. Didn't quite get that shot. Now that car, incidentally, 3rd place in the NGT class. 2 cars ahead of it, still to stop though. Sebastian Dumez, 2nd in the Labre competition car, still only made that 1 pit stop. And of course our NGT leader, Christian Pescatori, who is only 16 seconds ahead of the Labre Porsche, still to make a 2nd stop, which we don't actually think he will do. So we've got a situation at the front of both classes, David, where we reckon the leader is safe on fuel. We reckon the 2nd place car definitely isn't, but they're gambling with all that they've got crossed that something will happen to allow them to make it to the end somehow on what little fuel they've got left.
They are certainly gambling, but don't forget these people do have a gauge inside the car, so they can tell exactly how much fuel is used. It's a digital gauge, a very complicated system of working exactly how much fuel goes into the engine. So they'll know they've got so many litres left to get to the end. And they'll be in constant radio touch. You can see the team here, they've got the headsets on, they can talk to the driver, and they'll be talking to say, well, I've got this much left now as we cross the line, and that'll be being calculated throughout the number of laps that are left to be able to compete the 21.5 minutes that are left on this race. And it'll be, yes, we can make it, or no, we can't, or we can make it provided we lose another 500 revs for the rest of the race, or whatever it might be. So a lot of people will be doing a lot of work on that pit lane at the moment.
Yeah, that's really one of the intriguing parts of sports car racing, endurance racing, is balancing speed against consumption. And there's another arithmetic formula in there, but don't bother sending it to me. Maths was never my strong suit, as anybody who's tried to hear me add up points live on air will very happily testify. But the gap between Kumpen, who is short-shifting and desperately saving every whisper, every breath of fuel he can get, and Bouchou, who is chasing him down full of fuel, well, not full anymore, but with plenty to spare, really charging hard. There you can see the JMB Chiesa Ferrari team watching the proceedings. They, of course, are leading the NGT class. But Bouchou, David, full head of steam and everything to play for. Second place certainly up for grabs here. And again, you know, 20 minutes left. Who knows what might happen? Might still somehow find himself leading this race. And Bouchou won't give up. Okay, so he won't stop saying that he has got the worst car on the grid and that everything else is better. But there is the car he's chasing. Kumpen, the yellow and blue Belmondo car. And they're just one short straight and two back markers. Corrects and make that one back marker away now is Bouchou. And for Kumpen, the jig is surely up. Now the question is, when Bouchou gets by, as surely he must, will Kumpen come in then, or will they continue with this gamble and see if they can hold on to a podium position and somehow maybe hold off Sebastian Bleekemolen in the number 4 car sport car that's 4th place. There is Jeroen. There, the blonde hair just almost obscured there. That is Michael Bleekemolen. Yeah, that's the car sport Holland team. Mike P1, they say. Actually, now, talking about that, we're talking about Lawrence Pierce yesterday and jumping up and down, shouting at the team at Castle Combe last weekend in the British GT Championship because they were getting all excited that they'd taken the lead. Lawrence says, I don't like the team to do that, he said, because so many times we've sort of run out of luck on the last lap. Just like them to be, okay, we're in command, we're in control, let's just take it easy until the race is won. Anthony Kumpen, second place with 19 minutes to go. Now just 2.5 seconds ahead of Christophe Bouchou. Kumpen's last lap, 1:44.9. Bouchou's 1:42.7, and he passed two back markers in that lap as well. So Bouchou absolutely fine. Now nothing at all between him and Anthony Kumpen. Distance may equal speed over time, but I'm not sure what that gap is. That's probably something like half a second, a little bit less. And Vincent Vos in 5th place, about to get the pit board from Belmondo to tell him what the deal is with him. But sure enough, the rampant number 7 car of Christophe Bouchou charges through. Anthony Kumpen can't do anything about it. He's short-shifting to save fuel. Second place is the signal there from the pit wall. Confirmation of that move on the radio. And Christophe, well, certainly pushing the Viper hard, David, really giving it some welly there.
They've got to. They lost a lap with the coming into the pits with the first safety car thing, so they're pushing very hard. They've got sufficient fuel in there, and they know it, and they've been pushing all the time. You can see them come out of that last corner there, hard on the throttle, leaving two big black lines as they come out, trying everything they can to try and move towards the front. They are faster, or they have been faster than the lead car. They weren't on that lap because they're overtaking to do this one here. We'd see them diving down the inside. But they're not going to give up. I know they keep complaining about everyone else has got a better car than what they have. But believe me, they've got a very good car, because that car of theirs has won them so many races this year, more than anybody else put together.
Luca Riccatelli's Porsche being pushed down the pit lane. Jürgen von Gartzen, I've just seen the blue-suited mechanics running up towards it. Jürgen von Gartzen coming in. This is the car that was in 3rd place in the NGT class. They've lost a lap getting back. Something dramatic has happened to von Gartzen's car. That car, I know they have made, this is their 3rd pit stop. I was going to say, I know what it is. Of course, they've run out of fuel, but they can't have. Now, this is Julian Bailey, who's just got past Vincent Vos. That's for 5th place. Surely, no, that, or is he lapped the Belmondo car? No, Belmondo's got pink highlights, that is. No, that's not. That's Anthony Kumpen. Julian Bailey's just unlapped himself, so that's not a change for 5th place. Bailey still in 6th. Well, Van Gartsen taking on fuel, but I can't believe that was the problem. Whatever, they're out of the NGT battle. Pescatori leads, Dumes in 2nd, some 8 seconds back now, and lapping 2 seconds and more a lap faster than the Ferrari. But Dumes Porsche has not stopped yet. Fabio Babini in 3rd place in the NGT class has stopped. If they have got a fuel problem, David, they're looking at why they are not getting fuel to the engine, because they know they filled it up. They're looking at the unions there, the pumps, the trips, the switches and everything else. They're desperate to find out what's going on, and they don't know. Tyres being prepared for what? What rim would you suggest that is?
I haven't got a clue. I'm trying to work out which of the teams that is.
I think that is the Labra competition team, and I don't think that's their Viper pit box. I think that is their 50 Porsche. That would make sense. Sebastian Dumes yet to stop. Okay, so here's the deal. 16 minutes left in the race. Dumes is going to stop. I don't believe it's for the Viper. I know the board is there. I don't believe it's for the Viper. I believe it's for Sebastian Dumes in the number 50 car, who is 8 seconds off the Ferrari that leads in NGT. Dumes is in 2nd place. They're going to fuel him, and they're going to give him fresh, brand new tyres in the hope that with plenty of fuel and the boost turned right up and on new tyres, he might be able to catch the Ferrari and still possibly have a shot at winning the NGT category.
I think if he comes in, I mean, at the moment, he is going very quickly. He's quicker than what Pescatori is. But he's some 8 seconds behind him. No, he's managed to get that down to 4 seconds. He's locked 4 seconds off on that lap. But to come in, he's going to lose a minute in there, and there's no way he's going to make that minute back in 15.
3rd place car in the class, Fabio Babini, lapping in 1 minute 48 compared to the 1 minute 49 of the Ferrari, so he's in fuel trouble. Dumes, 145s. Michel Neugarten, 4th in class, he's doing 150s, so they're stroking it round as well. I don't know, he's by far going to be the quickest car in the class. Certainly with new tyres, a podium is not out of the question. Possibly returning to 2nd place in class might not be out of the question, but you're right, the maths may not help him. 14 minutes left. Race leader. Oh, I thought for a moment there I heard a fluffy engine in the number 3 car, and I really wouldn't want to wish that on them. 92 laps they've done. Now about to complete lap 93. Projected maximum distance of 126 laps, but we won't get there within the 3-hour margin. Incidentally, Neil Barnett on the email says that as you get it with the key, a GT3 RS has 420 horsepower, but factory-supported cars probably running between 20 and 30 more than that, so around 450, which is pretty much what David anticipated that the cars would be producing. And, oh dear, Jan Verschuren on the internet sending me another mathematical thesis on how to work out the distance between cars, directly contradicting our previous correspondent. I'm not going to get into that. Now then, thankfully, thanks very much indeed to Robert Thompson back in Paris, one of our Eurosport.com internet site guys. He said, been checking the results, and we think the points are Bouchou on 42, Campbell Walter on 23, Voss on 17, Hazemans on 10, and several of the Bleekemolen's on 7 each. Now, I'm not quite sure. I think that'll be Michael and Sebastian, probably. But I would think that Jeroen and Hazemans are on 10 points. So it looks as though Hazemans will likely leap up into 3rd place in the championship, and Bouchou will ease further away from Jamie Campbell-Walter, who is currently 2nd. Of course, Christophe Bouchou is the leader.
Why did the car have to come in again?
I really don't know what happened in the car, because probably it's a problem on the fuel pump, because I saw the mechanics change something on the fuel pump and then the engine starts again, so I really don't know in this moment what happened, but we lost a position on the podium, and after the bad qualifying yesterday, it was a good first stint for me, and now everything is loose, so I'm sorry for this.
Thank you, Luca.
Well, it did look like maybe one of the fuel pumps had given up because of the vibration and the temperature. And, you know, in a Porsche, you don't normally expect that sort of stuff. These cars comfortably finish 24-hour races year in, year out. But anything can and so often does happen, of course. This is the art racing car. This is Fabio Babini at the wheel, third place in the NGT class. And still waiting in the pits are the Labra competition team. And they are standing there. And I have to say, I don't know whether this is potentially just a caution move or whether they are genuinely expecting either the number 7 Viper that's currently second or the number 50 Porsche that's currently second in NGT, or whether they're just in case, because in the closing stages you can't take too many chances. Whatever good onboard pictures there as Babini comes out over the start-finish line. Oh, into the pits has come one of the Belmondo cars, and that'll be Anthony Kumpen's car, surely the number 11 machine, which is in third place. Down the pit lane it comes, yes it is. Green highlights, I think, make that the Anthony Kumpen car. The pit lane is too tall for me to see the numbers on the side. Yeah, it's number 11, so Kumpen comes in, finally run dry, the car out of gas. Belmondo team are ready for him. There you see him standing in third place. Now he's ahead of the Bleekemolen car by 1.45 seconds as they cross the line. Kumpen in the pits, and the Bleekemolen car was on the track. So up into third place has gone the second Car Sport Holland car. And there you see at a standstill is car number 11. And though, yes, David's saying, really, shouldn't there be something going on there? And yes, really, you would think there probably should be. Well, that's a very, very unhappy Anthony Kumpen, I think. Don't tell me it won't start. No, it does start, but an awful lot of standing around with nothing much happening.
They do seem to have a problem starting. He did start it, and it stalled immediately, and they're trying to get it out of the pit lane. They seem to have a problem with it getting it into gear. Maybe the clutch isn't working, and they're trying to bang it into gear to get it going. But
that
certainly
did sound like that, and you're saying, okay, why are they just standing there? Why aren't they touching it? You're not allowed to push start it. The car must start under its own steam, and it is starting, but you're right, David, they can fire it up, but they can't get the darn thing to move. It does seem as though they may well have lost their clutch, and that is tough for them, but good news for the Bleekemolen car. And look, here are the two Car Sport Holland cars. They're a lap apart nearly, but they are running nose to tail, and the Belmondo car has finally left. Now that's wretched luck for Anthony Kumpen. Wretched luck indeed. A perennial email question, of course, when we get to discussing cars and their road car routes. Everybody says, oh, I don't see very many Lister Storms around. Well, you don't, but they are there. And if you want to buy a Lister Storm road car, go and speak to Lawrence Pierce, and he will most happily build you and sell you one. Now, the Lister, of course, came into GT racing when the prerequisites for building road cars were much less strenuous, or much fewer numbers than they currently are. And the Lister, like the Porsche GT1 car and like the Mercedes GT1 car, was built in very restricted numbers. But there are Lister road cars around. I know, because I've actually seen a few. I must admit, I've never seen one actually driving past me on the road, but then I've only seen a couple of Ferrari 550s in my neck of the woods in my whole life. Another question, Michael wants to know, what's the nearest version of Porsche you can buy to a racing GT3 RS? You can go to Porsche and buy a GT3R road car. Yes, it's not quite as developed as the GT3 RS, but it's not far off it.
There's very little difference, actually. They do a very good job. I've actually seen the car and driven the car, and it is just very similar to the race car that you see here. Obviously, a little bit more money for the racing car, a few more things changed on it, but they do a very, very good road car version.
And the great thing about it is that when you go to VSAC and pick it up, you get given your little Porsche ignition key on your little Porsche key fob. And I've seen on onboard cameras a number of times in this championship that drivers are still using it. You can see the little key fob dangling about, even in the racing car. It starts on the key, because it's a road car, and road cars do. Well, look at this. Hazeman's really flying. You see go past Fabio Babini. Babini, great onboard shots here, showing you just how tight this track can be in places. It's actually not narrow as such, but one corner flows into another so much, David, that you really, I mean, we were driving around it last night and got thrown off, but we got stopped by a marshal who said, "Who do you think you are?" And we said, "Oh, do you know who we are?" I said, "Yeah, you're David Leslie. Go on, off my track." Not really, but it really is quite an interesting track. As a driver, you were saying, I'd really like to have a go because it really does flow, but then the problem is it is pretty much a one-line racetrack.
It is very tight, and there's lots of corners that do follow each other. As I said before, there's not a lot of long straights to get yourself sorted out on. But what I liked about it was a driver circuit. They've got so many corners, and difficult corners, like this corner here, corner 2. We can see it goes round to the left, but what you don't see quite so much on TV is the massive off-camber that goes round that corner. And when you come out to that corner, the right-hand kink you can see in the background there is, it's just such a fast corner. I know F1 car, I know it's flat out. It's not quite flat out in these cars, but very nearly. And all these corners just go from one to the others. Quite a lot of them are blind corners. You come up, have to brake and turn into them. But I reckon this is a great driver's car. And the drivers out there, some of them will be enjoying themselves. Obviously, there's a lot of them who are extremely warm inside. They're very, very tired, I'm sure, by the end of this race. But having said that, fantastic circuit to drive. There's just so much of it, so many different corners. Uphill and down dale it goes. You see a little bit of it on the cameras as we watch it, this bit going downhill. But absolutely fantastic.
Well, there are the two co-drivers, Jeroen Bleekemolen closest to the camera. That's the car he co-drove, leading the race. And Michael Bleekemolen with the blonde hair. Car he co-drove is in 3rd place with his son at the wheel, his son Sebastian. And as you say, a great driver's track here. And just a shame we didn't actually get a chance to hooligan around a little bit. Well, not hooligan around even, but drive around a few more laps in our road car. Well, the Carsport Holland team are having, undoubtedly, and I don't wish to say this a little early, but it's 5 minutes to go now. They are having undoubtedly their best weekend of the season. And this is the sort of luck that they have been eluding, that has eluded them without doubt. They've always had fast cars, but they've never had anything like a lucky car. Now, it's not luck that has made them fast, but it's finally a bit of good fortune smiling on them here in the sunshine outside Budapest. They are 1st and 3rd, with only Christophe Bouchou's Labre Competition Viper stopping a clean sweep of the top 2 places by the Carsport Holland cars. And Bouchou, I think, will stay where he is. Bleekemolen up to 3rd place, as Kumpen's car had all those pit stop problems. It dropped from 3rd down to 6th place. It's gone a lap off the lead lap, and indeed, such has been the pace of the Carsport car there. Peter Fox setting up the dramatic father and son shot over the pit wall for the finish there. Such has been the pace of the race leader, this number 3 car, that in fact they've even lapped the 4 car, which is in 3rd place. They have lapped everybody except Bouchou's Labre Competition car, which is 1 minute and 16 behind them, and a light, I think, is the Harbour car. It's had a ding somewhere, but it looks, well, it looks as though the extinguishers have gone off, actually, on Nigel Smith. So whether that was started by a fire or just an impact, sometimes it's a little hard to tell, because a lot of them are triggered by both, aren't they? They have a temperature sensor, but they also have an impact sensor in case the driver is knocked sideways, knocked unconscious by an impact, and the thing then is going to catch fire.
Yeah, I think the engine got very warm inside the back of that car, and that's where all the steam and smoke's coming from. The marshals there just aiming the fire extinguisher at the little grooves in the flutes in the back of the car there. They let the air out of the very hot engine bay, and they're just trying to fire it in there. Not knowing what they're firing at the moment, but it certainly looks very hot, so anything will do to try and cool it down.
Email in from somebody in Ireland who is on eMerge. Unfortunately, they haven't given a name, but the question is, will RML run a Celine S7 in next year's FIA GT Championship? And the outright answer is no, they won't, and nor will anyone else, because they're not allowed in.
Well, they could be, actually.
No, they're not.
If they build
Stefan Rattel said they're not allowing them.
25 cars. Now this morning,
I said they're not allowing
25 cars.
Well, in that case, they better start building another 20, hadn't they? I know we won't go there. There are more Celines on the way through the assembly line at RML. 53. No, David, calm down. That's Malkacek. That's not the car that is currently lying third in the NGT category. That's Jirko Malkacek in the second Art Engineering Porsche off track. 100 laps and a minute and a half left to go, nearly 2 minutes left to go, so we're not going to get 126 in, that's for sure, but Mike Hazemans won't care too much about that. Where is he? Halfway around the track. When he comes to the line next time, he will have one more lap to go, because the time will not have ticked away sufficiently, I don't think, and it will be just by a fraction that he'll go on to lap 101, which will be, no, 102, which will be the final lap of the race. Christophe Boucher in second place, and in third place it's Sebastian Bleekemolen driving the number 4 Car Sport Holland car, Vincent Vos fourth, Julian Bailey fifth, Anthony Kumpen sixth, and the NGT class leader in 7th place is Christian Pescatore, but there could still be drama there because only 4 seconds behind him, as they will come on to what will be their last lap, is Sebastian Dumes. 4 seconds behind, he's going a second a lap quicker. It shouldn't be enough, but it is the last lap. Now, can the Ferrari hold on to the lead? Yes, probably, but amazingly, Dumes in the Labre competition Porsche, like the Ferrari, has only made 1 pit stop. And I'm most surprised by that, most impressed by that. That's mighty driving by the Labre pair. The car started, the number 50 car started by Sebastian Dumes, by Patrice Gousselard rather, and Sebastian Dumes taking over. Must have been just after the halfway mark when they came in. Great drive by them. 27 seconds remaining as he crossed the line, on board with Mike Hazemans. One last lap of the Hungaroring. If you played this on Grand Prix 2 or any of the other simulators, you'll know what a tough track it is. As you see Tamas Ilias there walking away from the 21 car for the final time, a lap away from the end, and they're already 5 laps down though.
It's always a pity, even if you are 5 laps down, to just suddenly find that you can't quite get to that finish line. It's a lap and a half away, and all of a sudden the car breaks down, or you're buried in the barrier, or in a number of cases at the end of this race we've seen 1 or 2 people fall off and bury themselves in the gravel traps. So as we said earlier, very tiring race, very difficult circuit, very twisty circuit, and with the heat that we have here today, it really is taking its toll on a number of the drivers and their ability to keep their cars out of the gravel traps.
Neil Barnett from Team Eurotech, who has since been fired, incidentally, by Mike Jordan for telling us how tubby old Jordan's getting. He's saying, no, they don't. GTR and GTRS Porsche 911s start on buttons, but they do have an ignition key which you put in, and I've seen the key fob dangling there in the cockpit, so there we go. I'm holding my line on that one, and holding his line through the chicane there. I think that's the 53 car that's just been dragged out of the gravel, actually, as he goes past the Art Engineering car. On the last lap of this race, Mike Hazemans, and he will come out of this final corner. Here is the shot that Peter Fox wanted. Mike Hazemans with Michael and Sebastian Bleekemolen, and Jeroen Bleekemolen at the wheel of the other car. No, Sebastian at the wheel of the other car. Jeroen Bleekemolen out on track as Mike Hazemans wins for Car Sport Holland, and it'll be now nearly a minute. Wow, massive black stripes he leaves on the road. Yeah, nearly a minute before the second place car comes across the line. There's the third place finisher, and that is Sebastian Bleekemolen. He was a lap down. He'd been lapped by the leaders, don't forget. So he comes across the line in third place. But the Labre competition Viper we're still waiting for to cross the line. There the Bleekemolens celebrate, and rightly they should. They've had a very, very successful weekend indeed. Across the line to take the third place in the NGT class is Fabio Babini, because here comes our NGT leader. This is the 62 Porsche. Look for a white Ferrari. Look for a white Porsche with red and black on it. He can't be far away behind Sebastian Dumes. There he is. That is second, first and second. The Ferrari and the Porsche in NGT. And David, after 3 hours, doesn't come an awful lot closer than that.
No, that's pretty good as they cross the line there.
Julian Bailey, incidentally, up to fourth place in the end. And the Bleekemolen's very happy, but so too Christophe Bouchou's teammate there, giving the big thumbs up. And Bouchou, who started the car, finishing it. Jean-Philippe Belloc there on the pit wall, giving the big thumbs up and the smile. And I wait to see how much Bouchou can complain about the opposition in this race, because that should be quite interesting. So Bouchou, well, full marks to the team. We've said it before and we'll say it again. Probably the least developed of the, certainly of the front-running Vipers in the pit road, and yet they still come through time and time again. But it's victory for the Car Sport Holland team. Car Sport Holland win for the first time all year, the first time in a long stint of unlucky results. When you think back to the tough luck they've had this year with cars in the lead that have broken silly, innocuous little things. When you think back to last year, their fantastic battle right to the final race at Magny-Cours with Jamie Campbell-Walter and Julian Bailey in the Lister for the championship and for the victory. A flying, determined Tom Coronel then and Mike Hazelmans just couldn't keep track with the Lister or their own fuel economy problems. But it's victory here for Hazelmans. Bouchou in second place, Bleekemolen third to round out a 2 out of 3 podium finish for the Car Sport Holland team. A resounding success for them. Great drive by Julian Bailey to bring the number 2 Lister back into 4th place ahead of Vincent Vos and Anthony Kumpen in the Belmondo cars. So the Belmondo Vipers flattered to deceive in the end. Kumpen, well, I don't know quite what the problem was. It did look so much like a clutch problem that probably wrecked their chances of a top 3 finish. But in the end, Kumpen and Deforney, and David, a blinding opening stint again by Deforney, really doing the donkey work there and paying for it physically as well. But a good drive from them. 7th overall, David Therian and Christian Pescatori in the Ferrari, only 1 stop. 8th overall and 2nd in NGT, Sebastian Dumes and Patrice Gousselard, also only 1 stop. And Luigi Mocci and Fabio Barbini, who are 3rd in NGT and 10th overall, will be wondering how on earth the Labra car managed to get all the way through with just 1 pit stop. And if they could find that out, they would be very happy men indeed. So, 3 hours of racing, some incidents, some accidents, and of course the main one we'll remember will be that befell Jamie Campbell-Walter. But some very good racing indeed. The Hungaroring, can't pass on it? Yeah, well, don't tell Jamie that, that's for sure. So Sebastian Dumes in the Porsche, being congratulated by the other Labra guys. And there, well, Sebastian Bleekemolen being greeted by his dad, Michael. Looks pretty pooped, doesn't he? And there, Jeroen Bleekemolen also, there's Christophe Bouchou getting out of his car. Jeroen Bleekemolen, of course, who shared the number 3 car with Mike Hazelmans. And there they are. Apologies, incidentally, if you can hear a lot of thumping and bumping going on behind. We seem to have a monster sound stage right behind our commentary booth, and the DJs from Radio DJ, the interestingly named Hungarian radio station, have already cranked it up to 12 on the volume scale. And there, well, that's always a sad sign, isn't it?
Mike, it looked like you chose the right tactics when there was the yellow flag, but nonetheless it was a very convincing victory for you.
Yeah, we had a little bit of luck with that, but when Bouchou, when I went in, he had 58 seconds and I drove away till 76, so even if he had a pit stop, I don't think he had a chance. So it was good, just hot.
First and third for the Car Sport Holland. You must be pleased with the consistency of the standard fuel tank.
Yeah, we had it 4 races ago. We were in the game for the championship. It's getting very difficult now, but we try to win as most races as possible. That's something.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Well, good job, definitely, by Car Sport Holland. And I think Mike and his father, Twan, who run this team, will be very, very happy. And their new sponsors come on board just in time to witness their first win of the year, David. So that's pretty good timing by whoever the marketing man was that went for that deal, isn't it?
They've done a superb job. They've turned up with the new colours, and new sponsors in the car, and there they go, first time out with the new colours. They managed to put it on top of the podium position. Absolutely fantastic for them.
Twan Hazeman's there on the mobile phone already, undoubtedly talking to the new sponsors. So Belloc and Bouchou lead on 48. Campbell Walter still stuck there on 23. 20 points for Tom Coronel, and the Car Sport Holland guys are getting closer. I hope you took those down. We got as far as writing second place down. Well, there is Christophe Bouchou, and we may try and catch a word with him in just a moment, see what he has to say for himself. So Labre competition on 48. Car Sport move up to 31 as they jump ahead of the Lister Storm Racing Team, courtesy, of course, of first and third place here. Lister taking points for fourth this afternoon. Paul Belmondo Racing still really struggling to find consistent front-running pace, although absolutely hats off to the crew of their number 11 car, Anthony Kumpana, and especially Didier Deforny, who drove himself into the ground to give them a shot at a podium finish, which so nearly came off. And the man that you must feel most sorry for, the reigning FIA GT champion, Jamie Campbell-Walter, through absolutely no fault of his own, taken out of a race that he really knew was pivotal to their championship chances, with an errand back marker losing control of his car and unintentionally ruining the race for the Lister Storm team. Well, it won't be any consolation that it was nothing to do for him, because Jamie now, I think, will have to face a long uphill struggle to try and retain his championship. Well, of course, we move on in about a month's time now to the A1 ring, the next race, so plenty of time for testing and development. But just the other side of this break, we have got plenty more action. 2 Super Touring races and the Super Production cars, which should be a blinder. Stay with us here, live at the Hungaroring.
The FIA GT Championship. With Lease Plan. Fleet management in motion. Filatice. Stretching fibers, fabrics and yarns.
Yokohama. Power of performance.
Eurosport back live at Budapest with the thumping sound of radio DJ knocking on the back door of our commentary booth. Martin Haven and David Leslie, and we've just for the last 3 hours been watching a thrilling race unfold here at the Hungaroring, round 6 of the FIA GT Championship. Victory and third place overall going to the Car Sport Holland cars. Well, now we're going to take a look at the Euro STC. 2 races for these guys, the first earlier this morning, and this is the way they lined up in the championship as they came here. Nicola Lorini, the points leader, but not by much from Fabrizio Giovanardi. Not by much, well, just by 2 points, that's all.
Fabrizio, I know you think that the start is going to be important, obviously, at the Hungaroring, but you've been testing in Fiorano, you've been testing the suspension. How will that help you at the end of the race?
But we did a good hard work on the suspension, what I say, because it's important to gain on the race, to use less the tire. I think the job was for that.
Well, the story of the break between this weekend and Zolder is that indeed, while everybody else was away doing Le Mans and so on, Alfa Romeo have spent a lot of time and money and effort redeveloping the car. New engine work, incidentally, as well as new suspension work. Great start by the poleman. Nicola Lorini, slow away though, and he's been dumped away from the start. It's Giovanardi who leads from Gabriele Tarquini. Third place is the Audi, and that is Roberto Colciaggio. Fourth place, Nicola Lorini, under pressure from Fabrice Valfish from behind. Sixth place, Matt Neal, the red machine there. And we found out after practice, or rather the team found out after practice, that the misfire that has plagued that car all the way through, caused by the FIA's rev limiter. They've got a new one on it. And look further back at the top of the picture, contact between the 2 Conrero Alfa Romeos. Now let's have a look again. Watch the white car come on the left-hand side. That's Enrico Toccacello, and coming in, down and making contact with him, his teammate in the number 10 car. So The two cars out of the race. Gianluca Roda's car also being pushed away. And it was Toccacello who was hit by Lancialotti, who had started a row or 2 rows further up the grid ahead of him. But it's the reigning champion, the European touring car champion, Fabrizio Giovanardi, who leads. Gabriele Tarquini in second place in the Honda. And Honda not quite able to find the qualifying pace to put Tarquini on pole. But they reckon in the race, the Honda will be as every bit as much of a match for Giovanardi's Alfa Romeo. Colciaggio getting away well from third on the grid, and there is the number 9 car, and that's Lancialotti, looking fairly damaged after that clash with Toccacello. Incidentally, the two Conrero Alfas, we believe, now have the slightly older spec Nordauto Alfa engine, which was definitely quicker than the Conrero engines beforehand. And so the Nordauto cars have got a new development. Obviously, they're not going to give Conrero exactly what they've got. And there, the blonde lady in the dark blue with the headset on, Monica Sips, the boss of the team at Nordauto outfit, running these 3 Alfa Romeos for Giovanardi, for Larini, the points leader, and for Romana Bernardoni. Well, David, the Alfa Romeo's looking still very confident, but Larini a long way back, dropping into the clutches of Valfish, but more importantly, dropping away from this trio here. He's got some kind of early problem.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's dropped himself back there. They've been trying a lot of different things between the last race and now. These Alfa Romeos have been a lot of testing. They've said about the suspension that they were trying there. They've also got these new engines trying to go that little bit quicker this weekend. So for Larini to be that far back, I can't quite work that one out, because he likes to be right at the front. I know he's going for points at the moment and not trying to damage his position, but being back and forth is not where he wants to be.
Well, now picking up the action, this is 9 laps into the race, and as you can see, Larini still trying to hold on there ahead of Fabrice Valfish, but the action centering on Roberto Colciaggio's Audi, finally getting past the Honda. David, doing so, the Audi very good on the tight and twisty stuff, but in a straight line, the Hondas and the Alfas, much lighter cars because they don't have the 4-wheel drive weight penalty. Well, able to match him on power, and although the Audi got itself on the brakes nice and early on the inside line, just not able to bring all that weight slow down enough. Loses the place to Tarquini, loses to Larini, nearly loses out to Valfish as well, and that's all that extra weight in the Audi really causing him those problems.
Yeah, he just was trying very hard at the end of the straight. He knew the Honda was so much quicker in a straight line, and basically outbraked himself into that first corner at the end of the straight. And in doing so, he's managed to lose himself 2 places instead of just a 1.
So good news for Tarquini, he's got rid of the Audi. Bad news for Tarquini is that Larini has picked up a place as well and scores a few more points. Bad news for Giovanardi too is that Larini picks up a few more points as well, courtesy of that problem with the Audi. But look, Colciaggio's fought his way back through again. And again, you know, at the end of the straight, he loses several car lengths, but through the twisty stuff, he really does make them up again. And well, if Larini is not able to catch him, I think Colciaggio has got that place back for good, because he certainly looks close enough away, but oh dear, this is the start of it.
This is the replay early on when Colciaggio first went past Tarquini. Tarquini made a mistake on the corner at the back there, and that gave Colciaggio the little bit of run that he needed, because that was it. And then you can see that he's locked the brakes up coming into the corner at the end, and that's allowed Tarquini to come back through sort of 2 corners after he first take the place. And then running around wide around the outside, Larini's managed to nip in there as well.
Yeah, he was fortunate that he could straighten up for the inside line on the second left-hand corner, wasn't he? Because otherwise he would have lost the place to Valfish. So Matt Neal in 6th place, right on the back of this little group here. There's Larini, and look, he's almost in as much trouble there under braking as the Audi. I wonder if his brake pedal is going away on him or something else, because that number 2 car does not look anything like as composed as you would expect. Now, it would be great if the Hondas and the Nissans were able to fight door-to-door all the way through with the Nordauto Alfas, but that hasn't always been the case. Certainly Tarquini can take the battle to them, but we've got 4 different manufacturers here in the top half dozen, so still pretty good going, but I do think that Larini is still struggling with some kind of a problem, and I'm not sure what it might be.
He's just on the back of that group. They've got the first three out, and he can't seem to touch the first three. They're just pulling away that little bit now, and you've got this group here now fighting for fourth.
Oh, and he is holding them up. Look, Fabrice Valfish having a look at, not even really having a look, actually. He seemed to get caught out there because he was looking up and just, I think, touched the back of Lorini's car. There's Valfish coming back on. But Matt Neal sneaked by as a result of that. And if certainly if he is nursing a brake problem, then maybe Lorini. Let's have a look here. Yeah, it looks like Valfish sort of locks up a long way back, or let's say very early in the braking zone, and sort of closes, locked up much more quickly on Lorini than he might have expected. And so, I don't know, maybe Lorini has got a brake problem, and that might perhaps have caused him to start braking early into that back chicane. Whatever. Here comes our race leader, Giovanardi from Tarquini. Oh, and Lorini's off. Now, was Matt Neal inside him in the final corner? And did he make contact? There's Monica Sips. No, look, smoking heavily. And that's not the rear-wheel drive car spinning up its wheels. Of course, it's a front-wheel drive car. They can't do that. Have a look in replay. No contact at all. Matt Neal did go up the inside, but it's a puncture. Flat left rear. That's why Lorini has spun.
And look at that, when that wheel goes away, that wheel's not turning. There's something wrong with that somewhere.
Yeah, well, maybe if he's caught the puncture there, and then the thing slid so much sideways, it's run the tyre off the rim and it's wrapped itself around the suspension. Well, he was too late to come into the pits there, so he's got no option but to motor on round and try and make it back in. Of course, he'll need to, because there's race 2 to think about, and how you finish here is reflected in how you start race 2 with the reverse grid. If Lorini retires, he'll have to start from the pit lane, which will be, again, behind Giovanardi, Tarquini and all the other fast guys. If he can somehow get into the pits and get back out and finish the race, then if he's last, in fact, that would be perfect, considering, you know, for race 2, not for race 1, but it would mean that he would start at the front of the reverse grid. So, yeah, he's got to get back to the pits. Meanwhile, Tarquini right on the tail of Giovanardi, and Giovanardi probably not aware yet of what's happened to Lorini, and the fact that Lorini's picked up a puncture, it seems, not necessarily going to mean that Giovanardi has, but Tarquini very close indeed. See if he can make any inroads into the Alfa's power down the straight. Well, no, you'd have to say they're pretty much even on top speed, wouldn't you, David?
You would have to say there's very little in it between the two of them.
Giorgio third in the Audi. Matt Neal pulling off to the left-hand side. Yes, well spotted there in the corner of the screen. Was fourth across the line ahead of Eric Carroll and Sandro Sardelli's Nissan, but for some reason pulling off on the left-hand side on the run down to turn 1. Lorini in the pits. So, off comes, yeah, not much from the left rear. A wheel with a bit of rubber still attached. It looks as though, luckily, it's untangled itself from the back end. There's Monica Sips, the team boss, overseeing things from the pit wall. And as Lorini gets ready to rejoin, Tarquini all over the back of Giovanardi. No, surely Giovanardi can't have a problem in these closing stages. And Heinrich Simanchik's car. Now, how on earth has he done that? He must have made contact with somebody on the straight and been turned around and hit the pit wall head on. But goodness knows with whom.
I think what's really interesting about this is we've seen earlier on Colgiaggio drop back when he locked up into that first corner, and these first two got away from him, and now he's been able to put in some very quick lap times and pulled right back up from you know, about a couple of hundred yards back he was. Now he's picked himself up and right on the back of these two leading cars.
So Giovanardi really feeling the pressure from Tarquini, and Gabrielli almost pushing him through the corner there. He's so close, and Giovanardi's Alfa really squirming around. Well, whatever Nord Auto have done, they've certainly given an improved car to Giovanardi and Lorini, but amazing to think that the Honda team have not turned a wheel with this car since the last race, and still right on the pace of the Alfas all the way to the checkered flag. So it was Tarquini in second. Valfish there in fourth place ahead of the second group, but a victory for Giovanardi. Larini, though, will start at the front of the reversed grid. He's last across the line, but he does finish. So it'll be Nicola Larini, the man who led by 2 points coming into this race, who will start at the front of the grid on pole position. Giovanardi then takes the championship lead. Gabriele Tarquini second, finishes, needs to finish race 2. He really must continue to score major points, and a good strong third place run from the Audi of Roberto Colciago.
That was a very controlled race there. You led from start to finish, but Gabriele was putting you under some great pressure. How difficult was it to keep Gabriele behind you?
I saw behind me Gabriele and also the Colciago really faster than me. I just do a race with one eye in front of me, one eye on the rear mirror, without without do a mistake, because Gabriele was really hard.
So the points now, Giovanardi retakes the lead. Race 2 still to come, of course, after the FIA GTs. Nicola Larini in third place, Gabriele Tarquini in third place, rather Nicola Larini in second place, but Valfish closing up on Tarquini in fourth place. So the two Alphas and the two Hondas pretty much on speed, how you would expect the points to play out. And Matt Neal again, unfortunately, failing to finish in race 1. Disappointment for him, but delight for the Nord Auto team. Monica Sips and the crew celebrating victory for the reigning champion in the European Touring Car Championship. That is Fabrizio Giovanardi ahead of Gabriele Tarquini. That's how they started. That's how they finished. So Giovanardi wins race 1. What will he be able to do in race 2? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But Nicola Larini might be the Eurosport back live for race 2 of the FIA Super Touring Championship. This is round 6 of the Eurosport Super Racing Weekends at the Hungaroring. And on pole position for the second race, Nicola Larini, whose puncture robbed him of any chance of a good finish in race 1. But he's on pole here, and that may well mean victory for him here. Let's catch up with him and find out what he thinks.
Nicola, for the first time this morning, after this morning's result, you've lost the lead for the championship. But now you're on pole position on a lap where it's very difficult to overtake. That must give you a big advantage for the second race.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't like to have an advantage losing the first race. So I had a tire problems, and now I'm here. What I can do to try to win the race, no more.
Thank you, Nicola.
So Nicola Larini on pole position, and there you can see at the back of the grid the man who won, Fabrizio Giovanardi. He'll start last, and on the outside of the front row, Moreno Soli. He's a newcomer to the championship, one of a pair of new cars, 2 new BMWs, and he starts alongside Larini. Third place is the number 3 machine of Romana Bernardoni. And she was obviously therefore third last in the previous race, as you will no doubt gather that's the way it works. Then Enrico Toccacello, and a number of pit road starters. No, in fact, just one pit road starter. Of the cars that were damaged in race 1, only one will start from the pit road, and that is the Audi, I believe, of Massimo Piggioli. So just trying to identify who is and isn't on the grid. I think it's Mikko Lempänen in the number 19 car that is on the grid, and he starts on row 3. And David, the earlier race, the drivers starting to run into a touch of tyre problems at the end, but they were very much expecting that the second Super Touring race now in the heat of the afternoon, 3 o'clock, would be much tougher on tyres. But stiff breeze, a little bit overcast. You've just been out the back door. What's the temperature looking like at the moment? It's hard to tell with the air conditioning working so efficiently in our booth.
It's still very warm out there. It's not quite as warm as it was yesterday afternoon when we had the qualifying, etc. So maybe a little bit easier on the tyres than we were expecting. But still, I don't see it being too easy. These cars, front-wheel drive cars especially, really got to make the front of the car work so much harder. Four-wheel drive car obviously should be the best here. Very twisty circuit, so it can make a good use of it there. So we'll have to wait and see, but I would think Giorgio will make a very good start, as he always does with his four-wheel drive car, and if he can get off that line and get to the front fairly quickly, I think he could find that some of the other more expansive cars could have a problem. Remembering that Larini is starting on the front, that always sort of makes a mess of my theory, but...
That will separate the men from the boys, because Larini starting on front. Well, we've seen every race so far this year, it's been a question of whether the fast guys will work their way through the field, and they always have. It's always been the Alphas or the Hondas or the Audi that have won. However, they have never had the situation that they've got now, where one of the outright front runners is actually starting on the front, and that's what we're looking at now. So it's going to be very tough indeed for Tarquini, even tougher, I venture, for Giovanardi, the new points leader. And another car just coming out. We just saw a moment or two ago Eric Cairol pulling off from the grid in his red, yellow, blue and white BMW. His teammate Paolo Zadra has finally appeared at the exit of the pit lane, so he will be starting from the pit lane. Now you'll have to excuse us, because David and I are going to take this opportunity to write down what the grid is. 3 and 10, 19 Lempen, and I've got Lancialotti alongside him. That's good. Then I've got 18 alongside. Okay, so that is Sardelli, and I think we're not going to see Matt Neal. Okay, so we've got Valfish, excuse me about this, Colchiago, Kolk, and then Tark and Giov. Okay, so no Matt Neal. I can't see him at the end of the pit road. I can still only see two cars, the Audi and the BMW. So Matt Neal's car and both of the Opels, which were, well, Gianluca Roda's car was pushed off the grid because it wouldn't start, and Sumancic's car, which blew up in qualifying, started but failed to finish, unlike Magnus Magnussen. So Sumancic not in the race, or not in this race. He did finish, of course, but nose onto the pit wall, so he won't take much of a part in this race. There's Pajoli, and behind him Zadra. And in fact, of course, starting from the pits, they will start behind even Giovanardi. Now, there's been an awful lot of discussion and talk going on with regard to the future of touring car racing and production saloon racing in Europe. The recent FIA World Council approved a new set of regulations for the European Touring Car Championship for next year, and we've been talking to a few of the main players here. We'll be catching up with that after this race, so if you want to know more, stay with us for the end of this one. Cars on the grid ready for the 12th race in the European Touring Car Championship. This is Eurosport's 6th racing weekend. This is race 2 here at Budapest for the Super Tourers. Gabriele Tarquini lines up on the final row of the grid. So too does Fabrizio Giovanardi. They start on the 6th and final row of the grid. 13 laps of the 3.5-kilometre Hungaroring. Watch the Audi, second from last on the left-hand side. But watch Nicola Larini, the poleman, go, and Bernardoni behind him almost stalled the car there. Larini left big black stripes, much too much wheel spin, out-dragged comprehensively by the Italian Moreno Soli. Off goes Eric Cairol, a big off into the barriers backwards. His teammate Paolo Zadra starting from the pit lane. The first thing he'll see will be his teammate backwards in the barriers. And further back, Giovanardi off on the back of the track, but look at that. Right back there. No, that's not. That's Bernardoni. So Giovanardi has got past Bernardoni, who has gone from the second row of the grid right straight through to the back. A dreadful, dreadful start by Bernardoni. But look, Larini has now managed to get back in front, I think, of the white BMW. Was too busy trying to spot which of the Alphas was where. I think that Soli has blown his start completely. And look at this. Held up behind the Conrero Alpha. Around the outside of Tarquini and Fabrice Valfish goes Giovanardi, and Tarquini, I don't know what the Latin for I'm not sure that's entirely fair is, but I'm sure he'll be using something similar to that. Giovanardi 2 spots ahead of him, and the Conrero Alpha definitely doing its level best to hold off the Hondas. Well, that's really bad news. There is Moreno Soli's white BMW right at the back. Went from the front to the back in fairly short order, beaten only to the tail of the field by Romana Bernardoni. And our pit lane starters are there. Further up is Roberto Colciaggio, as you expected, David. He's got a blinding start. He's now in 3rd place.
Yes, that car just made a superb start. A little bit boxed in down towards the first corner, but he's used all that grip that the four-wheel driver's got to get himself through around the back. And here we can see now he's right beside, or right behind one of the Camaro Alphas. Obviously, as we said before, struggling on the straight line speed a little bit, so he won't be able to do anything with it down straight. And why the Camaro switched the wiper on, I don't know. I think he went for a different switch, but got the wrong one. You would think by now these guys driving these cars halfway through the season would learn exactly which switch works what item on the car. There we are, dives down the inside. Once he's on the inside, he'll keep that there. Oh, very wide went the Alpha there. Lost a lot of time. If he just hung on a little bit tighter, he'd been a little bit better. Just behind that in 4th place, it looks as though it's Sardelli. Then next up after that is the Giovanardi with Tarquini going round.
Going past Lemponen in the Audi, gets safely past that. And Toccacello, well, forced well out wide as he tried to defend that inside line in turn 2. Balfish makes short work of Lemponen as well. The Finns Audi is not as quick, it seems. Now watch the Audi go. Let's follow its progress. The silver car, he follows Cairol's BMW. Oh, I wonder, no, Cairol goes round one of the white Alphas, and not quite sure what that camera shot was showing us, but didn't really get long enough at the start, I'm afraid, to see just how far up the order Colciaggio went into the first corner. Sandro Sardelli in the Nissan, under pressure. And it was, again, the Conrero cars on the start line. And again, it was the number 9 car of Angelo Lanciolotti that did the damage. Last time, a la Schumacher, he rammed his teammate into the pit wall. This time, well, not his brother, his teammate. This time, he managed to dispose of Eric Cairol quite happily as well. And I wouldn't be at all there as Cairol. Yeah, doesn't look very pleased at all, does he? Wouldn't be at all surprised if Signor Lanciolotti does not have a couple of words with the stewards this weekend, because 2 shocking pieces of driving at the start. And I have to say, actually, some fairly shocking driving by Toccacello to allow, surprise, surprise, an Alpha through, but to badly balk the Hondas. So Nicola Larini leads, Roberto Colciaggio 3 seconds behind in 2nd place, Toccacello 3rd, Sardelli 4th. Of course, they are fighting for position. This is not being lapped by the leaders or anything else. There's no real reason why they should move out of the way. And Giovanardi there in 5th place, now with Tarquini right behind him. Stop-and-go penalty being handed to car number 3, Romano Bernardoni, and to car number 10, Enrico Toccacello. Well, I can't see that Bernardoni jumped the start, unless she's been penalised for not being very quick away. I can't possibly imagine what that was for. She barely moved, never mind jumped the start, she sort of slumped the start, so I really can't see what that's for. David, any suggestions on that one?
I've got no suggestions at all. It's the quickest I've ever seen anyone lose so many places. To go from the 2nd row of the grid to the back before you get to the 2nd corner was one of the most amazing pieces of driving I've seen so far.
On board in the Honda, we were with Fabrice Balfish there as we chased Gabriele Tarquini and this man Fabrizio Giovanardi, the reigning champion now for the first time all year, the points leader. There is Sandro Sardelli's white Nissan. Giovanardi's got past him. Sardelli washes out wide. Honda's going for the inside line. Let's see if Balfish can go with him. Down the straight they come. Tarquini dives inside, didn't get Sardelli at the final corner, gets him at the first. Doors open, Fabrice. Go to the right-hand side. Sardelli will come back to cover, and you can go to the inside. He didn't move fast enough, but still Sardelli guards the outside line on the run down there. And so Balfish does get that move. Both the Hondas get past the Nissan. And that puts them now up into 5th and 6th. Still not big point scoring, not compared to Nicola Larini, that's for sure. And they've still got Enrico Toccacello to dispose of. And of course he's in an Alpha. so he may not be best disposed to let the Hondas through. David, at this stage of the season, do you think it's conceivable that there is a little bit of friendly help going on among the Alpha teams?
I think at this point of the season, we mentioned before that the Hungaroring team have just been given the engines from the Nord Alpha team to help them along, and it has made a big difference. They're qualifying much further nearer the front, and I would think with that help of here are some engines that will make you go much quicker. By the way, we need you to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that to help us along without being too blatant. I mean, no one is going to, at this level anyway, drive and try and keep someone back so blatant that you'll get penalised for it or anything like that. But if they can drive within reasonable limits and try and make life difficult for the Hondas to get past, then that's reasonably acceptable. But what you will not want them to do is to drive anybody off the road or do anything totally stupid.
Larini, Colciaggio first and second, and Giovanardi now up into third place as they come across the line. Tarquini fourth, Valfish fifth, Sandro Sardelli in sixth place. Mirko Lempinen has also gone past Roberto Toccacello. I have a feeling that Toccacello may have blown a gasket somewhere. We saw him passed easily by the Hondas and the Nissan and everybody else streaming by him. I think he is. He's come into the pits. Toccacello has blown. Larini leads it. Eurosport Live, race 2 of the Euro STC, round 6 at the Hungaroring. On board with Nicola Larini, on board and outboard with Nicola Larini. The race leader started from pole position on the reversed order grid. Roberto Colciaggio started third from last, he's second. Fabrizio Giovanardi started 12th and last, he's third. Gabriele Tarquini started 11th, he's fourth. Fabrice Valfish started in 9th place, he's in 5th place, and Sandro Sardelli started halfway down the order and he is in 6th position. The winners of race 1 start at the back of race 2. The man who leads from pole position is Nicola Larini, who had a puncture that dropped him out of contention in race 1 and meant that he was the last place finisher, so he could start race 2 from pole position. So he may temporarily have lost the lead of the championship, David Leslie, but I have to say after this race I think he will have it back as Angelo Lanciolotti comes past us very slowly. We ride with Fabrice Valfish. Tarquini and Giovanardi are losing him, but I don't think there's much chance of them catching and passing Larini for the lead, do you?
No, Larini's took the opportunity. He lost the first race with that spin and that puncture, so he took the opportunity to make sure he can get back to the pit, put another wheel on, get out and finish the race. That put him on to the front of the grid for this race. So having lost that previous one, all he can do is think about the next one. He's done that, he's gone out there and he's done a really good job. He started off the front, and with the other quick guys at the back, he's making hay while the sun shines, as they say. So I think they find it very difficult to get anywhere near him. Colciaggio's got a nice safe second place, and now we're looking at third Giovanardi and Tarquini right behind. Now we've seen in race 1, Tarquini followed Giovanardi for the whole race, basically trying to get past him and couldn't. And I think it'll look pretty similar here. He tends to be a little bit quicker than Tarquini. He certainly was in the last lap, something like half a second a lap quicker, and has caught Giovanardi up with catching somebody in a 2-litre Super Touring car. Front-wheel drive is one thing, getting past is something totally different. So on the straights here we can see very little difference between the two of them. If I would say probably Alpha easing out a little bit along the actual start-finish straight. So Gabriele trying to make it up all around the corners, around the back of the circuit. Very difficult, as I said before, quite a narrow circuit, very twisted from one side to the other. So a bit of an uphill job here to try and get that third place and a few more points.
Nicola Larini is on lap 6, as are these guys, of 13, so nearly half distance. In fact, he's probably done half the distance. Romana Bernardoni finally deigns to come in for her stop-and-go penalty. Roberto Enrico Toccacello flew through the pits earlier on. Now that's a bit of a telling picture. She could barely get away from a standstill at the stop-and-go.
She went to set off and stalled it. By the look of it, you can see the thing start to wheel spin and all of a sudden almost stop, and you can see the hand going for the starter button to have another go at it. So a little bit excited when you come in there. Something obviously you don't normally do is the stop and go. It's not something you would normally practice to make sure you get it right.
I wonder if she had a similar problem on the grid then, if she's maybe got like a hire car, a flat spot's anywhere below about 4,000 RPM and it won't pull away from anywhere. Larini leads then, Colciaggio all over the back of him. Colciaggio the fastest car on the track at the moment and has been for the last 2 or 3 laps. Quicker even than Gabriele Tarquini. Tarquini's pace has dropped a fraction because he's now right behind Giovanardi. But Colciaggio, David, look at this. He's actually so close to Larini that he might almost be within shouting distance. Not at turn 1, but down the hill at turn 2. What he's got to do, though, is keep his tyres alive for maybe lap 10 onwards of this 13-lap race when he can push Larini harder and harder and hopefully ruin the Alfa's tyres.
I think certainly he's got more chance of that, remembering he's got 4-wheel drive, so he's putting the power through all the 4 tyres. Everybody else is putting it through only the front wheels. So I think his tyres have got more of a chance of lasting. All these people are using exactly the same tyres, and it's a one-make formula as far as tyres goes. So everyone has exactly the same tyre, but spreading that load over 4 instead of over 2, as the front-wheel drive cars are, I'm sure he can look after them much more, and he'll be looking towards the end of the race, as you said, to making a move.
But he has to keep the pressure on. The whole point here is that he needs to push Larini, force Larini really to abuse his tyres. But wow, now that is the drive through the chicane. That is the way the Audi rides those curbs as well, because you throw the Alfa at the curbs just like you throw the Audi at the curbs, but the Alfa really takes off over them. The Audi seems to ride them much better, and anybody who remembers the Audis racing in Britain in the British Touring Car Championship, you know, the way Frank Bealey used to hurl his car around and it would still come back for more over any kind of curbing. Those are a very resilient car. They look like they were carved from solid, not pressed from sheet. And Nicola Larini in second place. You saw team boss Monica Sips on the pit wall. Well, it's only almost to be expected on this tight and twisty and rather technical track that the Audi was going to be in with a shot. And now let's see what Larini can do in a straight line. Well, answer, not much. Audi pulling away. Watch Larini fly there, whereas the Audi seems almost to keep its wheels planted on the downhill side of the curve. And Larini really bounced up there, and just a fraction more traction through the chicane gave Colciaggio the run. So Colciaggio caught down the straights by Larini. And interesting, we were watching Larini in qualifying, and David, I did point out this onboard camera, he seems to be moving the car, I mean really moving the car around, always using a lot of steering, a lot of action on the wheel, and yet Giovanardi seems to be a much smoother driver. See Pajoli's car stop there. I was really interested to hear that the Michelin tyre engineers say that despite what outwardly seems like a much more aggressive driving style, Larini's actually much kinder on his tyres, and I couldn't really kind of associate that fact with what we see. It's some bizarre factor of his driving, obviously, that he's just nicer to them somehow.
I have to say, I tend to agree with you. When you watch him inside the car, he's very aggressive with the car. He's working the steering wheel all the time. He really does throw it around. Maybe he's doing that to try and keep a nice balance in the car, so the car is always balanced through the corner. And while Giovanardi might be smooth to watch from inside the car, if the car is actually slipping and sliding around on the circuit, then that will generate a lot more heat in the tyres and not do them a lot of good as they sort of go through this race, this very difficult race with the heat and the multiple corners that we have on this, the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit.
Well, we've certainly seen that Giovanardi is sliding the car around. The last 2 or 3 close-up shots, the car really moving 4 square across the road. And if he's in tyre trouble, then presumably behind him, Gabriele Tarquini may be in a similar sort of trouble as well. He is right with Giovanardi, and like Colciaggio before him, looking down the inside of the Alfa at the first corner. And again, the deal with Tarquini, he would perhaps empirically be faster if he could get past Giovanardi and be able to drive away from him. What he's got to do is try and force Giovanardi to lose his control on this, his tenure on this 3rd place. Just rattle him enough to be able to squeak by, because I do think that if Tarquini can get by, he will probably stay ahead of him in 3rd place. And that would put him nicely between the 2 Alfas in terms of point scoring, allow him to close the gap a fraction to Giovanardi, if not to Larini, the points leader. Well, David, you know this Honda Super Tourer very well. What are its strengths really on a track like this? Is it its sheer straight line speed? Does it have ability to ride the curbs well? Is it better in the corners? Where would you be looking to try and make advantage of its chassis and its capabilities?
I would have to say it's very good, very strong engine. But having said that, the Alfa Romeo, as we've learned this weekend, has done a lot of work on their engine, and they've made it go that bit better than it was previously. So maybe the Honda no longer has the advantage that they had, but certainly on this tight circuit, the Honda is very good at the front end. It really can sort of get hold of that tarmac, and when you turn the steering wheel, it does turn in very sharply and does have very good grip on these tighter corners. So I would say it was very much suited to a tighter circuit rather than a very, very fast circuit. Having said that, Gabrielli is very much stuck behind the Alphas here, whereas at Monza, at the very first race, he was so much quicker than what they were. Maybe he was just a little bit more switched on. I do know that Monza is his favourite circuit, and at Monza he did make his car fly, even though he did actually have to start out of the pit lane.
Well, he was quick enough, second fastest in the morning warm-up this morning. Gabriele Tarquini in the Honda, second fastest in the morning warm-up. Half a second slower than Roberto Colciaggio's Audi. He was the fastest car of all in the morning warm-up. Colciaggio leading this race, having started in 10th place. Nicola Larini behind him second, having started in first place. That just shows how much speed Colciaggio had. In fact, in the warm-up, he was nearly exactly half a second quicker than Tarquini. Matt Neal was third quickest, and he was 9/10 slower than Colciaggio. Larini fourth quickest, 1.1, and Fabrice Valfish also 1.1 seconds behind in fifth place. And in the morning warm-up, well, there was all sorts of problems for the number one Alfa. Didn't go out in the Super Touring warm-up at all. He had a dreadful time, did Giovinardi, and although Giovinardi was on pole after qualifying on Saturday, he looked grumpy as anything, didn't he, when he was leaving the track, David? Really in a miserable mood, and I don't suppose his mood will have lightened very much after race one, but race two certainly won't be helping him.
No, I don't know why, but last night when he was going out the circuit, he seemed to be, well, down about something. I don't know who told him some bad news or whatever, but he went slowly wandering out the circuit towards his car, and then got in and gave his car a hard time as he left the circuit as well.
Yes, judging by the look of his girlfriend, she'd been having a bit of a cold shoulder as well. He really wasn't in very much of a mood for anything yesterday, I don't think. I have to say, you know, having qualified on pole, I'm not really sure why. Maybe he just discovered that Larini hadn't used his last set of new tyres or some such, and thought, oh, blimey, I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow. Anyway, fit of the grumps or not, he did win the first race. He has got the championship lead, and he will retain it after this, of course, unless he fails to finish, because Larini scored nothing from the first race, and there was only 2 points between them. So even though Larini is one car ahead of him at the moment on the racetrack, that means that Giovinardi will go away from the Hungaroring, contemplating going to Austria in about a month's time as the points leader. Top of the hill, highest point of the circuit, the back chicane. Giovinardi with Tarquini still trying to take third place from him as they start this gradual descent down into the bottom side of the valley. And I think perhaps the stiff breeze that's picked up in the last 40 minutes or so has helped the temperature a little bit. Certainly helped the air temperature a little bit. Maybe the track temperature has suited, but still pretty tough work. And again, Giovinardi's car looking like it's moving around a lot more than the Honda.
I think if these guys can just keep their wits about them and not make any mistakes, then Tarquini will find it very difficult to get past Giovinardi. Looks like Larini's decided to settle for second place. He's a little bit back down, some 2.5 seconds back on Colciaggio. So this will be, if I remember right, Colciaggio's first win this year.
Well, Giovinardi in third place, 6 seconds back from Larini, certainly not going to advance himself any further up the order, and as you say, absolutely critical for him really that he keeps Tarquini behind. You know, don't let that rot set in that you keep getting past on the last lap. He'll definitely want to keep the Honda back. But for Colciaggio, well, we've seen him fare well in the rain, of course, as you would expect with a four-wheel drive car. We've seen him left behind in the real high-speed sweeps of places like Monza and Silverstone. But here at the Hungaroring, well, it was a very strong first race for him. He finished 3rd place, podium finish in race 1, and he will win race 2. So that is a very good weekend indeed for Roberto Colciaggio. And I bet the Audi would be quite happy to come to some more tight, twisty circuits. One of our email correspondents said, any chance of a super racing weekend coming to Mondello Park in Ireland next year? Tell you what, if you asked Colciaggio and then showed him the circuit layout, he'd be going, oh yes, yes, please, give me some of that. And could you arrange some of that nice warm Irish rain as well for us? But I'm not sure that that will unfortunately be the case. Mondello, a great place to go racing, and a very nicely revised Mondello Park circuit currently in operation, but say I'm not sure that the Eurosport Racing Weekend will make it over there. We'll have to wait and see what plans they have for us next year. But for Roberto Colciaggio, it's been a very happy weekend at Budapest. Victory for him. Teammate Pijoli retires, but Colciaggio wins comfortably by 3 seconds from Larini. Giovanardi 7 seconds back in 3rd place, just ahead of Gabriele Tarquini. Fabrice Valfish will be 5th, and Sandro Sardelli, the best of the amateur teams, in 6th position. And for Paul McNeil, dramas in the first race, unfixable. He didn't get a chance to start race 2, but certainly the Audi team are very happy indeed with that. I should think Roberto Colciaggio will be a very pleased bunny as well. And in terms of the championship points, that certainly moves he and Gabriele Tarquini a lot closer together. But the big threat still, of course, Fabrizio Giovanardi, the new points leader, and Nicola Larini in 2nd place, just relentlessly racking up the points. They seem almost unable to fail to finish these races, which is very bad news for Colciaggio and for Tarquini, who have had a number of incidents this season. So victorious at the Hungaroring, Roberto Colciaggio launching the Audi over the curbs and assaulting the scenery. Doesn't seem to make much difference. The car has lasted under him, and he's driven superbly to win here in race 2. Well, David Leslie, Roberto Colciaggio winning, and the Audi driver really making his way very swiftly to the front at the start, but helped by the retirements of a number of the midfield runners. Still, good job by Colciaggio. Took the first chance that he managed to force out of Nicola Larini and never really looked back.
He did. He was got through. He didn't get through on the start line as he would want, I'm sure, but took him a very short time to get himself up into 2nd place, and just caught Larini hand over fist as he was going along. He was taking a good second lap out of him when he caught him, and I thought he was going to take some time to get past, but he managed to come out of that chicane over that curve much quicker than what Larini did, and simply shot down the inside to outbrake him into the very next corner. So there we are, very well driven indeed. Fantastic for Colciaggio with this privateer Audi that they've got here, up against some very strong opposition from the Nord Auto Alphas. That was the mechanics shooting in there to welcome him and thank him very much for an absolutely fantastic job. But they've got to remember they've actually now parked their cars in what they call parc fermé, which is an area where no one can touch a car, so even the mechanics can't go in there and say, fantastic job, I'll unhook your helmet and get you out. They've got to leave the car alone and not touch it whatsoever, so they'll be ushered away from the car now and towards the cameras to talk to them, and then onto the podium.
Good job by the AGS Motorsport crew, and Klaus Scheppers from Holland wants to know, how is it that an old A4, and it must be an old car, I mean they can't have been raced by the factory for 4 or 5 years, how is it that it's quicker than a 2001 Alfa Romeo? Well, the simple fact of the matter is that if you've got better traction, even if you're carrying more weight, then you will be able to perform better out of slower corners, and that's the way it works. The Audi has got fabulous traction. Here's Roberto Colciaggio.
Roberto, you got off to a great start there, and then there was a super move overtaking in the chicane. It's a 1st and 3rd this weekend. It seems as though your car really likes this tight, twisty circuit.
No, it was good. Only in the beginning I have a little problem with the giver, and but after everything runs well.
and the car was really perfect, so he make me overtaking Larini after was really not easy, but you know, it was more easy.
And first and third this weekend, that's good for the championship for you.
Well, I really don't know how is now the point in the championship, but like I say in the beginning, I try to do my best every race, so we will see in the end if everything went in my way or in the other way of some other driver.
Thank you, Roberto.
Good job, Roberto Colciaggio, and he's talking about his gearbox. David had a new gearbox fitted for the weekend, very notchy in qualifying, he said, which gave him a lot of problems, and he thought really sort of showed or failed to show his speed. You can see the points, the way they line up there, but Colciaggio, the gearbox wearing itself in gradually in race one and in the warm-up this morning, really much more able to show his speed, but still with Larini starting on pole, not just a little bit ahead of him, but on pole, I am surprised that Larini really lost so much ground. Let's face it, you know, he was a long way ahead on you know, at the beginning. Just Colciaggio again with the traction from the start. See Larini on the right-hand side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars between him and Colciaggio, but Colciaggio coming through the mayhem there into the first corner, into 5th place, and then driving through lap 1, picking up another couple of places. Poor old Eric Cairol's car completely knacked, and Angelo Lancialotti in trouble as well, but there you go, the rocking and rolling over the curbs. The Audi really does handle much better than the Alfa, and so Larini at you know, even with the lead from race 1, unable to keep Colciaggio at bay. Well, 2002 will be a new era for the European Touring Car Championship. There'll be 2 categories in 2001, Super Touring and Super Production. They will be just still perhaps racing in 2 formats, but in the same race we expect. And the new Super Touring regulations will be somewhere short of where they are in terms of power and development, and a little closer perhaps to the British Touring Car regulations of the current series. Mauro Sips is the chairman of KSO, they're the organizer of the series, and he says the important thing is that we're talking about the European Manufacturers Championship, and in the near future hopefully a World Touring Car Manufacturers Championship. Number of manufacturers around the world who can't afford Formula One because either they haven't got the cash or they're owned by teams that are already in Formula One. He said, you know, like Ford, if Jaguar in Formula One, Ford or Volvo will never be in Formula One. And so the 2-litre touring car rules will remain. It'll be a less developed form of 2-litre engine, but in the current rules you'll have to have the engine that actually came with the car, which is a big change. With only one set of regulations, hopefully we'll have more cars on the starting grid, because all the top teams in Europe will be looking towards the same grids, the same race, the same championship, and for hopefully spectators it'll be easier to understand touring car racing around Europe. Well, the Nord Auto team, obviously this year's front runners, and Nicola Larini says that they have already started to work towards next year's regulations. Monica Sips, the boss of the organization.
We are now running with very old rules, so it's very good to change car and everything. So Alfa Romeo now it's just starting this new car with the new rules. We will use also for next year 156 new model GTA.
So new car coming from Alfa. The World Council of the FIA proposed the new regulations on one condition, that there will be a minimum of 18 cars from at least 3 different manufacturers on the starting grids at the beginning of next season. And of course, former front-runners Honda may well be looking to make a return.
If you want to begin also for new competitors a new project with this class, is much easier than the present Super Touring car, where the cost of the investment were absolutely very expensive, and so also for the manufacturers that could be involved, the decision was much more difficult. In this way, also a team can try to have the budget to start. So I think that is a good compromise between the 2 different ideas.
So super production cars like the current BMW may be able to be upgraded if the manufacturer makes a kit to this halfway house between the current super production and current super touring, and teams like Carly Motorsport keen to be involved.
I think it is better to drive the car for the drivers, and for us I think the performance of the car goes a little bit better. So I think the situation is good for 2002.
Well, the hope is that by making the cars slightly more affordable and more closely related perhaps than something like a silhouette formula to a specific model of car, they will encourage more manufacturers to join next year's European Super Touring Championship. Welcome back live, Eurosport at the Hungaroring for the 6th Eurosport Super Racing Weekend. And now we're about to go super production racing. We've seen the STC cars in action. They're 2 races. And had a look at the new regulations for 2001.
Here we are coming onto the straight. I'm shifting just from 3rd gear to 4th gear, then to 5th. It's still a little bit uphill here. And then just before the 100 meter I brake, and then the road really drops away quite badly. You cannot even see like this on the camera. There's a long corner, you shift down to 3rd gear, and the corner seems to go forever. Then you go quickly to 4th gear, brake again, and you have actually the same corner but the other way, also quite down the hill. Then here you have to make a quick change of direction with the car, change to 4th gear. It's almost flat this corner. I think in qualifying on the new tire I would have done flat. Now you start to go uphill again, 5th gear, and this is quite a quick corner I like. You take a 4th gear and you have to be very careful because else you end up left in the barrier. Here you shift down to 3rd, there's a long turning corner, and you have to make sure you go on the throttle early. But don't touch the curbs here because it's not nice for the car. Now you come for the chicane, you have to brake really hard, 2nd gear, and here the curbs are very high. You really have to drive aggressively over them to get a good exit. Now you get a assist combination. Here is important you keep the momentum going. You do this in 3rd gear. And it's also again important you take this corner flat. The car is wanting to slide away from the back, but it's not a problem. Now you get a quick right-hander again, which is taken in 4th gear. Here you can run on the curbs, as I do. You can see I have a little bit of oversteer at the exit. Now a quick kink. And here is a problem with my car because something broke on the engine and I lost water. So the water came on the wheels, and that was the reason why I slid off. You can see the water, so I'm not making an excuse. And I just returned to the pits. I mean, this is still this would be 2nd gear normally, and then you take 3rd, and then you arrive back on start-finish. But obviously now I have a problem with the car, so I returned to the pits to have it fixed. You can see again clearly the water running from the car. So, but this is a lap at Hungaroring. It's a nice track. A lot of corners, and you have to keep the momentum up quite good.
Well, join us for the super production race from the Hungaroring live on Eurosport on the other side of this word. Stay with us. Eurosport live at the Hungaroring. Round 6 of the European Touring Car Championship, the super production cars on the grid, and some surprises after qualifying. Duncan Heisman, the championship points leader, going strongly. Peter Cox behind him in 2nd place, who just showed us around the track. But in terms of qualifying, well, it was a little bit of a surprise not to see either of the Ravaglia drivers in the pole position conference, because Heisman, car number 14, starts on the front
Duncan,
of the grid.
I know that you're very pleased to be on pole position, but I know that you're just as pleased that your championship rival Peter will be starting a long way behind you on the 3rd row.
Yeah, it's always good to, if there's one row in between. It's hard on this circuit to overtake, so if he hasn't got a good start, it will be hard to get to the 2nd place or maybe 1st place for him, yes.
Thank you, Duncan.
Sorry about that. They normally mention to us when they're going to interview drivers. They couldn't quite be bothered that time. Tommy Rustad, as I was about to say, on the outside of the front row of the grid, best qualifying position of the year so far for the Nissan. And they seem to have shaken off the misfire that they caught from Matt Neal's car during qualifying yesterday. Norman Seaman starts 3rd, Stefano Gabellini 4th, Peter Cox only in 5th place, then James Hansen, the British driver in the Edenbridge car, in 6th place ahead of Pagan Anderson. Toby Massini starts in 8th place, or Tobia Massini as he's now called, because he's not racing in England anymore, and the Italians can manage to mention or pronounce his name, Tobia. Then Tom Ferrier, Gianluca De Luca, and a couple of cars starting right at the back. Gianni Morbidelli, who was fastest of all in practice, starts on the penultimate row of the grid because he changed his engine, as does his teammate Paolo Ruberti. And this is Stefano Gabellini. Gabellini starts on the outside of row 2. The 3 CBME cars, incidentally, now also using Carli Motorsport engines, as are the Ravaglia cars 1 and 2, and the Carli Motorsport cars, which are Heisman, Anderson, and this weekend the Belgian driver of the 3rd car, which is being entered by BMW Belgium, which is Peter Beckers. Now, it's his first appearance in that car, and first driving the car, trying to learn the car and the Hungaroring. James Hansen and Tom Ferrier, the Edenbridge drivers, neither of them have been to the Hungaroring before, so they're both busy trying to learn the darn place as well during qualifying, as well as set a lap. And of course, they only have the qualifying session as practice. They don't have extra practice sessions or practice days, so you've just got to go out in practice and then lay your laps down in qualifying. A little bit of question as to whether Carli Motorsport, who are now the official supplier for the engines, actually have got quite enough capacity to supply all the engines to everybody. Of course, if they are supplying and tuning the engines for all the teams and dealing with all the engine management systems, it does mean that they have to be very even-handed in the treatment of their own drivers, as well as their own drivers' championship rivals. And of course, the Carli car on pole position on the right-hand side of the front, Peter Heisman, Duncan Heisman, and behind him, not Peter, Duncan Heisman, and behind him, Norman Seaman and Peter Cox in line astern. But Tommy Rustad with the Nissan. David Leslie, again, you know a lot about the Nissan Primera in both its Super Touring and Super Production guises, and this circuit really seems to have suited Tommy Rustad very well indeed, and he's in amongst and ahead of most of the BMWs for the first time all year. Now, is that a factor of the track, or has somehow something in Tommy and the car gelled a little better this weekend?
I think it's both, to be perfectly honest. Tommy has got a very good chassis. The chassis has always been good. When we've seen, whenever it comes to any sort of twisty parts of the circuits we've seen before, he's been very good and right up there and right behind the BMWs. When it comes to the straight line speed, he tends to lose out a little bit. Now, obviously, they've been working very hard on that engine to get some more power from it, and it's certainly been working, because checking the qualifying analysis that they had yesterday, Tommy Rustad actually had the highest top speed of all of these super production cars. So now they've got the speed to go along with the handling, and they've managed to get it right there onto the front row of the grid.
And particularly impressive that, because of course this isn't exactly endowed with long flat-out straights, is it, the Hungaroring? So not to get great speed, he's also got to have had very good drive out of some of the tight corners that lead onto the longer straights. So you know, out of the long right-hander onto the front stretch, he must have been going pretty nicely through there. And there's one of the other fast points of the circuit is before the back chicane. And so, again, Tommy Rustad really looking for something special here. Now, spoke to Duncan Heisman yesterday about the rivalry he's got with Peter Cox, his countryman. They are very much championship front-running rivals. Cox, the leader early on in the season. Heisman now taken over in the last 2 races. And really the big change around was the wheel-to-wheel battle they had at Magny-Cours 2 races ago. And then at Zolder, again, another wheel-to-wheel battle. Cox lost out in the first one, went off the road and retired from the race. Lost out in the second one, stayed in the race, but Heisman got ahead of him. And Heisman saying that Peter Cox just didn't want to have anything to do with him this weekend, saying, I don't want to see you, don't come and talk to me, anything else like that. And Duncan say, oh, fine, doesn't bother me, I'm absolutely okay with that. So I think Cox, David, feeling the pressure of being perhaps the championship favourite, and then have somebody who is very, very close on pace and just as tough in terms of sort of racing, sticking to his line. Cox just feeling the pressure perhaps a little more than he was expecting to.
Maybe he shouldn't really be. Having said that, he's not done very well here this weekend with qualifying, so it's like he's had a few problems. So maybe a bit more pressure as the race starts.
Duncan Heisman leads the field onto pole position for round 6 of the European Super Production Championship. Tommy Rustad alongside him. Norman Seaman and Stefano Gabellini row 2 for Ravaglia and for CBME in their BMWs. Then Peter Cox and James Hansen for Ravaglia and Edenbridge in their BMWs on row 3. So Tommy Rustad, the top non-BMW, car number 3. Very easy to spot in the BMW hordes, the Nissan Primera with that bright blue and white colour scheme. Let's see what he can make of the start. The BMWs on the right-hand side of the picture, on the clean side of the track, but there's been several races started from the left-hand side of the picture, the right-hand lane, so they may go away a little bit better. 18 laps to go, red lights are on, the revs rise, away they go. Good start from the front row men, very good start from Rustad, but it's Duncan Heisman that leads. Stefano Gabellini trying to come between Norman Seaman and Peter Cox, and rushing through from the back come the CBME boys. There is the number 5 car of Gianni Morbidelli, makes a great start. So too does Paolo Ruperti, and pushed out Norman Seaman. Peter Cox takes advantage as Seaman gets shoved out a little bit wide by Stefano Gabellini. Rustad runs very wide indeed, undoes his hard work at the start, just holds onto it. There was a tyre squeal further back, somebody's gone off, and that is Norman Seaman. No, it's not. It's one of the other BMWs as well went spun round, but also that's the second of the, right at the very back, the second of the Nissans. But I'm sure there was a white BMW roof there as well. Somebody else involved in that. We'll wait and see how it settles down. Heisman from this group, Rustad, Gabellini, and I'm sure it is Cox, yes, in 4th place there. Norman Seaman in 5th. Now, who else might perhaps have been James Hansen, white-roofed BMW that we saw getting into trouble in the first couple of corners. Now we need to go back to the next group. Looks as though the Edenbridge car might still be there ahead of, or it might have been Pegan Anderson. He's also, I think that's Pegan Anderson. It was James Hansen in the number 10 car that was spun round. Pegan Anderson was still there. It's in front of this group. There you go. There's James Hansen. Tom Ferrier goes past him, as does everyone else. But it was Hansen that was spun out in turn 2. And no, I knew I'd seen a car going round. Wheels all out of alignment, and that's the end of the race. That's why James Hansen has stopped. So bad luck once more for the Edenbridge boys, or Hansen at least. Tom Ferrier in car number 11 still continues. So it's Heisman from Rustad. Then we've got Gabellini, Cox and Seaman. Then Anderson, big break back to him, 2.5 seconds. And yes, Cox goes down the inside, takes the place from Gabellini, but David in too fast, and Stefano gets him back.
Yeah, he just came in a little bit too quick there, couldn't hang on to the inside, and Gabellini took the opportunity to dive straight back through there. So back to where they are, 3rd and 4th. The yellow flag has been waved there, no overtaking while there's a yellow flag. That's obviously the Hansen car that's stopped there.
Replay then, we're on the main straight with Peter Cox, goes out wide, Gabellini covers, comes deep down the inside, Gabellini forces him very deep on the brakes, Cox runs out wide a little bit, takes too much speed into the corner, Stefano cuts back inside, and well, there you go. And then as they ran down the hill, Cox getting a big wobble on, and Norman Seaman taking a very wide line into turn 2 to make sure he didn't hinder his teammate. Cox, of course, the championship leader, now looking once more for a way past Gabellini. We're saying that the CBME cars also this weekend with the Carli Motorsport engines shared by the Carli Motorsport team and the Ravaglia team as well. So they should be very even in terms of power. And it comes down to the driver's choice of setup and his ability to use the setup he's got to really make the differences between them. Again on board with Peter Cox, David, as we suspected, the super production cars able to launch the cars at the curbs fairly comfortably. Now again, Cox all over the back of Gabellini and really forcing the black and orange machine all over the road in his attempts to hold him off. I think Gabellini finding the pressure really starting to tell on him. Peter Cox must force a way through soon, I'm sure. He's right behind him onto the straight, stays right up high. Gabellini in the middle of the road, covering a low move, but not for long enough. Can Cox go down the inside? Gabellini had that one nicely covered that time.
Yeah, Cox knew he had a lot of work to do because he didn't have a very good qualifying, having had a breakage. He told us that he had a front suspension breakage. What he didn't tell us, I discovered afterwards, that he just hit a curb, and that's probably what broke the front suspension. But as drivers are drivers, they wouldn't let you know these little pieces of information. So he knows he's got to work hard to make the time up, and he's looking to do it now, and this quick left-hander here, and through he goes. So that's him now up into third place. Now what he's got to do is, ooh, a bit of a bump there. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Come on, my mate's got past, now 1 past 2.
He is really holding up Norman Seaman very badly indeed. Now, do you think he missed a gear there somehow as he was being passed, trying to hold on?
I think he just, when someone passes, you do lose a little bit of time, but not that much time. That wasn't so terribly good. Norman had a few bumps at him on the way in before that, and I would say 6 or 7 got a little tap to the back. And then when he got the next corner, he didn't have him, he just hit him clean out of the race. That I will have to admit to being very bad, and you know, you need to be penalised if you're taking somebody out of the race. Racing down to the door and taking a bit of paint off, I've got no problem with that at all, but he wasn't even close to coming to go past that car when he turned in there, and he very much front wheel of the Norman Seaman's car to the black one, and very much knocked off.
Yeah, Norman, well, you know, sometimes you misjudge things, and that was definitely very misjudged, that one. But he really did have a lot of speed in hand there. Now, look at this BMW and Nissan battle. Heisman leads from Rustad, 3 laps in, and just half a second between them, not much more than 2 or 3 car lengths anywhere. And Tommy's got a really good chance here, hasn't he? What they must try and avoid doing is allowing Peter Cox to catch them up. Certainly Tommy won't want to be trying to pass Heisman and worrying about Cox at the same time. I wonder whether he feels he's got some speed. You know, you talked to him before the race, David. Does he think he's got an advantage anywhere, particularly that he can use?
He feels that he's got a very good car. He's very pleased with the performance this weekend. To be right at the front of the grid, he's just so pleased with it. He had a problem in the start of qualifying when he had that misfire, being in the garage right next door to Matt Neal. I had jokingly made some remark about it transferring from one car to the other, but the minute he secured that misfire and he went back out, within that one timed lap he needed, he was on the pace and right on the front of the grid.
Tom Ferrier here chasing the Alfa Romeo of Tabea Massini. These 2 drivers raced in the National Saloon Cup last year in Great Britain. Ferrier, as I recall, racing in a Peugeot, a privately entered Peugeot 306 16-valve, and Toby Massini then racing in the Honda Integra R. And that battle continues on board with Ferrier, trying to come around the outside of Massini. Great little battle. Massini, of course, in the Alfa Romeo, and although Alfa's front runners in the Super Touring, the super production car not quite so well developed. I believe there's going to be a stop-and-go penalty for Norman Seaman, the number 2 machine. David saying he judged that as definitely a punishable offence, and I have to say I don't disagree with him. He misjudged it completely, and I'm not sure whether the stop-and-go the stewards will have given him for biffing the car up the backside or thumping him off at the chicane. I think probably thumping him off at the chicane. Little tap or 2 in the straight line is not necessarily too much to worry about. Tom launching up the inside. Little dab early on the brakes there by Massini. Is that a little bit of gamesmanship, David, just to flick the lights on, or do you think maybe he's anticipating a problem with his brake pedal there?
I think if you've got a problem with the brake pedal, you're not 100% sure that it's actually going to work when you hit it. Then you tend to give it a little tap with your left foot while still flat out, in order to make sure that the pads are up against the discs ready for when you want to hit it and stop. So if you've run over a curb on the way out of a corner, that usually gives the brake pads a little bit of a rattle, and it'll come away from the disc. So when you want to brake, the pedal travels further than you expect. So a quick tap on that brake pedal at the end of the straight will make sure it's correct and ready for you to use properly. But here up front you can see Duncan Heisman first and Tommy Rustad just hanging on in there, following him round in 2nd place, which is the right thing for Tommy to do, really, not to get involved in a fight with him and try and pass him early on. This race, as we said earlier, was 18 laps, so we're only on lap 4 at the moment. If he can just hang on in there and follow him towards the end and then worry about trying to pass him at the end, but if he tries hard now and slow each other down, then that will only attract the attentions of Cox, and Cox is going fairly well, but I have to say at this moment in time, Heisman is still the quickest guy on the circuit, the leader.
And Rustad's 2nd quickest as well, so yes, Cox is going relatively quickly compared to everybody else, but he's a better part of half a second slower than these guys, so he's not actually catching them. Stay with us for more action after this. Eurosport live at the Hungaroring, round 6 of the European Super Production Championship. And Duncan Huysman still leading from Tommy Rustad. Now, Huysman's an experienced driver here. He's raced here 2 years in the Porsche Super Cup last year, and 2 years earlier he was also in the Super Cup. Now, in his first appearance, he didn't make it through a full lap of the race. He got heavily T-boned off, but he did at least have the practice time, and of course practice, qualifying and the race in the Super Cup last year. So all he had to really do was just fine-tune his BMW. Now, right behind him, Tommy Rustad, he's had the same time on the track this year, but of course he will have spent a degree of that learning this track, and some of the drivers saying it's not the easiest track to learn because there's so many sort of different corners and different types of corner and different blind approaches and so on. So Tommy a little bit at a disadvantage there in terms perhaps of the ultimate setup of the car.
He's probably a little bit behind on knowing the circuit, but I wouldn't say on the setup of the car, because for Duncan Huysman, he's got this BMW rather than the Porsche Super Cup that he had before, but certainly these guys, they're very professional. The guys at the front have been around for a long time now, and like Tommy, he can learn a circuit very quickly. So very technical circuit, will probably take a little bit longer than most, but nevertheless I would reckon that they'll learn it within, I don't know, say 20 laps or something, maybe slightly more, being slightly more technical circuit. But for the time to get through the whole of their free practice, and certainly before they get into qualifying, they should have the circuit fairly well sorted.
Just saw Norman Seaman in the pits, down in 13th place, and probably will find he's further down when he comes out to the pits. I think almost the whole field has gone by him, except for Paul James Hansen, who was out on lap 1. We were riding on board for a moment there with James's teammate at Edenbridge, Tom Ferrier, now with Peter Cox, the Dutch driver, thumping it over the curbs. This is a section he likes, he says, the flat-out corner, this fast section. Cox in 3rd place, 2.8 behind Rustad in 2nd. And the lap times, Huysman 1:52.4, Rustad 1:52.7, Cox 1:52.2 on that last lap. And so Cox is the fastest man on the track at the moment. The only other man in the 52s, Gianni Morbidelli in 4th place, 1:52.8. Not bad, David Leslie, from having started on the last lap of the grid. And the reason he did was the fastest man in practice had an engine change, and if you do that, you automatically get sent to the back of the grid.
Yeah, they have this rule here to try and keep the cost of the championship down, that you should be able to use an engine for quite a long period of time before you need to change it. So if you have a change during a race meeting, they make you go to the back of the grid. It's to stop anyone who arrives here with a qualifying engine to try and go terribly quick in qualifying, then changing it for a race engine that will last a bit longer. So to try and stop that from happening, if you change the engine between qualifying and race, then you're put to the back of the grid. So all that effort is wasted, and it looks like Tommy Rustad just wasted his 2nd place. He managed to get a big spin, and he's got a puncture at the left-hand rear there. You can see the tyre flailing away as it was going round. And
well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because in the first Super Touring race, Nicola Larini picked up a left rear puncture as well, and that's exactly what happened to him as a result. It wasn't so evident that he had the puncture until he spun, but he certainly picked up a slow puncture. And I wonder, with all the gravel that's been distributed around by the various different cars, whether that might have had something to do with it this late in the afternoon. Larini was in the first race on track this morning, so that can't have been his problem. I'm sure it's just a slow deflation. But there for Tommy, yeah, big slide, big handful. Not what you'd want, I think, at speed into the first corner. The laden outside wheel suddenly going down on you.
No, it's obviously, it was getting away from him. And you could see the white smoke as we were in the car following. And that white smoke was the front wheels, which he had accelerated very hard with. Getting wheel spin from the front, trying to keep the car going in a straight line, not spinning. So he managed to catch it on that one. Unfortunately, on turn 3, he managed to lose it, but he's seriously struggling. He must have cottoned on by now that he's got something more than just a small problem with that car.
I'm sure he has, but still trying to go back to the pits rather than trudge back in the heat. But lucky there to avoid being hit by, I think that was Enrico Cavici in his little 147 Alpha that he sort of spun across the bows of. But luckily I think he's now been passed by almost the whole field. apart from maybe Norman Seaman. And
I think it's terribly disappointing because Tommy's worked very hard with this car, this very much underfunded car that's out here compared to some of the other BMWs that are up front. And he's working so hard with the team RGN Motorsport from Britain to make this work, and to get right up there today, to be on the front row, to be running a very good second, right behind Duncan Huisman, was a fantastic result for the team, for the small team. I've known the team for a long time. They've been together. Most of them worked for Nissan Motorsport Europe at one point or another, and they've managed to put this car together themselves. And as I say, they've done a fantastic job to get this car right to the front of the grid.
Yeah, very disappointing indeed for them. And particularly because Simone De Luca in the other car is also, as we saw, off at the first turn, and he's actually running stone last behind Norman Seaman. So he'll be coming past Tommy Rustad in a moment, as he, in fact, he has done as Rustad has come into the pits. So Peter Cox still chasing Duncan Huisman. Now, of course, no longer in third, but in fourth place. And Huisman ahead of him. You can just see the white speck there when you watch the onboard picture on the right-hand side. Cox 4.1 seconds back. Huisman's last lap 1:52.5, Cox 1:52.7. Not much to choose between them. Gianni Morbidelli third place now, and Paolo Ruperti, his teammate, in fourth place, both lapping in the 53s, 53.6 and 53.4 for Morbidelli and Ruperti. So going a little slower. Behind them, 53.3 for Pegan Anderson, who is so far up the exhaust of Paolo Ruperti, he's probably in the cockpit by now. Just 0.3 of a second between them at the line last time. Tom Ferrier in sixth place, now leading from Tobia Massini. And there's that battle ahead. There's Pegan Anderson. Well, Pegan's made a mistake then somewhere, because he was right behind Paolo Ruperti, the black car that you can see just in front. And Ferrier down the gearbox, fifth for third for this first corner. New tyre on for Tommy Rustad, but he's just gone a lap down, so that's a big shame for him. The Norwegian leaves the pits, as still Duncan Huisman motors on in the number 14 machine. And BMW, very much the most developed car in this championship. BMW raced it all last year in the German Super Production Championship. Didn't win, incidentally, with the car, but certainly did enough development work that over the winter they could really fine-tune it. And the Alfa, well, it was the car that won the German Championship, but it doesn't seem to have progressed as well. And the Alfa Romeo Super Tourer, a very well-developed machine indeed, very fast front-running cars we've seen with Giovinardi and Larini, but this Super Production car, not quite the match yet for the BMWs out front of it. And the Alfa in seventh place, being led now by 6 BMWs. Well, Alfa Romeo with two different cars here, David, the 156 and the little 147, which is their sort of Fiesta-sized three-door hatchback, if you like, with its very distinctive old-fashioned Alfa grille. And I think that shows that there is really no factory control of the teams in this championship, because I can't imagine Alfa Romeo particularly wanting to race two different types of car if they were running, you know, factory-backed teams.
No, I think they run their, shall we say, factory-supported team with the Nord Auto car in Super Touring, and this in the Super Production is run by the Conrero team. Now remember, they also run two cars in the Super Touring, so they're here at every race meeting with 4 cars altogether, so that's quite a big team to try and look after so many Alfa Romeos, and they do a very good job with it as well.
Pegan Anderson being put under pressure by Tom Ferrier. This is the battle for, David looks startled, the battle for 5th place. Yes, it is. And Paolo Ruperti there in the CBME car, the black and orange Triumph-sponsored machine, is easing away. The CBME Engineering are long-term supporters of Italian and European touring car championships, and ahead of him, this man, Gianni Morbidelli, ex-Grand Prix ace, and very, very personable man, very aggressive driver. It must be really galling to him that the car is just not on the pace of the Ravaglia Motorsport cars or the Team Carli Motorsport cars, because he is such a combatant, is Gianni Morbidelli, and he's really struggling here in a sort of limbo behind the front runners and yet ahead of all the others. And the CBME starting to close the gap a little bit on the front runners, but it's hard to see how they're going to close too much on Carli Motorsport when Carli are building their own and CBME's engines. You can't necessarily imagine that they will allow CBME to have the most powerful engines on the block. Whatever, it's a Carli Motors car that leads. Duncan Heisman, Ravaglia Motorsport car in second place, Peter Cox, and here come the CBME pair, third and fourth. So for all of their engine changes after practice, looks as though the changes were justified because they're going well now. Pegan Anderson fifth there, and Tom Ferrier about to think about a move for that fifth place. He's currently in sixth, and if you remember 3 or 4 laps ago he passed Toby Massini. Massini's Alfa Romeo not even in shot now, and indeed Massini's Alfa run by himself, and Luis Villamil, the other man in the other Alfa 156, that's run by a separate team, Club Harama, as well. So the 156 is really very much independently owned and run cars.
Yeah, what Tom Ferrier's got to do here is just keep on pushing and hope that Pegan makes a mistake, and there was the mistake. Unfortunately, he was just a little bit too far back at that point to try and capitalise on it. Pegan we've seen before make mistakes in races and have an off, and he managed to do that also here in free practice yesterday.
Well, Pegan doing his level best to allow Tom to catch there with a wheel on the dirt and then a monster lock-up at the subsequent corner as the tank slapper sort of sorted itself out, but he arrived a bit unstable under braking and through the twisty stuff. The Edenbridge driver is very close. Again, Anderson runs wide. David, looks like he's got a tyre problem or something, because he's using an awful lot more road and an awful lot more tyre up than Tom Ferrier. Ferrier being very neat indeed. He's looking at the inside line. I don't think there's a chance there, though. But he really is pushing the veteran Swede very hard indeed. This is great stuff from young Tom Ferrier, and young is the word, just into his 20s. Anderson has been racing since, well, since Tom was on a bike with stabilisers on it. Pegan Anderson was racing in the British Touring Car Championship, then in 2-litre BMWs. So Tom Ferrier taking the battle to the far more experienced Swede. And now perfectly placed. Let's see if he can pull this one off. Now look at that, the Carli motor just easing away there from the Edenbridge car. What was Peter Briggs saying to you about their engine supply? What's the deal with them? Have they had new motors yet from Carli?
Yes, they had the up-to-date motors from Carli Motorsport. They were telling me that they went testing at Pembrey in South Wales, and they phoned up to say we're going to do this, and Carli just said, yeah, that's fine, just off you go. And nothing about, you know, we'll look after the engine, or we'll detune it if you're going to do a lot of testing miles so you don't wear it out, and then we'll sort of like tune it back up a little bit when you come racing, because these engines are so highly tuned, so well looked after nowadays with their electronic control units, their little black box, the ECUs, that I know when I was racing in touring cars, if we went testing, the engine management people would come along and usually knock a couple of degrees out of the engine if you're going to do a lot of testing. We're doing racking a lot of miles up, and then when you wanted to go racing, they'd put it back up to try and get the absolute best out of it for racing situations. And Peter was a little bit taken aback that Carli just said, yeah, it's not a problem, just off you go, do what you want. And you know, the engine is the way it is. But we've seen on the straight just now, when they came on with Pegan's car down the straight, he was able to pull away from young Tom, and this is, as I say, one manufacturer now. Carli Motorsport supplies the engines for all of the BMW cars in this particular championship.
And it seems from the shots we saw on the straight there that some Carli engines are more even than others, because certainly he was right up Pegan Anderson's exhaust coming onto the straight and was way out of braking reach at the end of it, and that was going to be a very, very disappointing sight for Tom Ferrier to be so close to Anderson last lap and just watch him drive away. Now, is it possible that there's a difference in the gearing or something that gives him that initial advantage onto the straight, do you think, or is that really just going to be down to sheer grunt?
There's all sorts of things that can cause it, to be honest. It can be the way you come out of the last corner, It could be a better gearing, it could be the way you change gears, it could be you're better at changing gears than the other guy, or it could simply be that you've got a little bit more power, and having watched that and seen what was happening there, I would put that down to you've got a little bit more power.
Now, the other thing that I was going to ask you a little bit about, maybe we'll get a chance to listen if we go on board with Tom Ferrier on the straight again, was a couple of times it seemed that although his hands were on the wheel, the gearbox was making sort of clunking noises, and I wondered whether he was maybe just having a little problem with one of the gears staying in properly. I wasn't quite sure if I was hearing what I thought I was hearing, so I didn't, didn't mention it at the time, but I just wondered whether he might have had a slight gearbox problem going on there or not. Charlie Morbidelli, third place, and 153.9 to 152.9 of Peter Cox and 152.8 of Duncan Heisman. Again, showing that there are very much differences between these cars in the Euro Super Production Championship. BMW, incidentally, has sort of built the cars and then handed them off. They don't do development work on the cars. They haven't done development work. Well, they have done some development work on the cars, but if you're wondering why the reason Carly Motorsport, one of the independent teams, has been given the job of building the engines, first and foremost, Carly is an engine builder and not specifically a race team, so they build their own engines. They're very successful and everybody else wanted them, and now obviously it's transpired that BMW, who don't have the capacity to build a load of spec engines for this championship themselves at the rate that they are needed, because they're concentrating on trying to whop Ferrari in Formula One, have decided to hand over the whole deal to Carly, and I'm sure Carly Motorsport very pleased to have the business and the money and the ability to sort of capitalise the business and expand that side of it. But still, it's again, you know, you can't help but imagine the reservation that some teams have of the championship front runners team building the engines for all his rivals, and that's something I think the BMW will need to think a little bit about and address. I'm sure they were well aware that that might be the potential for grumbling early on, and made the decision anyway. But possibly, David, because they didn't really actually have an alternative, because they've got no capacity to build engines for these cars.
I think what you've got to do when you're supplying so many engines for so many different people, you really have to be whiter than white, and you have to put your hand up and say, look, I make them the same for absolutely everyone. And I'm sure at this moment in time, while there are a little bit of grumbling up and down the pit lane to say maybe we don't think it's quite right, I'm sure Carly Motorsport will be doing their best to prove to everyone that really, you know, the other teams have got exactly the same engines as what they've got, but whether they have or they haven't, it doesn't matter. If you have, if you're the man building the engine and you happen to be quicker than somebody else, they won't think it's your expertise or your ability to develop a car or fine-tune a car or get the suspension to work or get the best out of the tyres or anything else. They will automatically think that you must be doing something with the engines because you build them, whether you are or you aren't. So they're in a catch-22 situation, Carly Motorsport, probably doing absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever, but because they're doing so well, someone has to think of a reason to try and make it more difficult for them, or to bring them down, or say, you know, they're better because of this, rather than they're actually doing a better job overall with the whole car.
Duncan Heisman, one of the reasons that Carly Motorsport is going so well, his car out front. The pole position man leads from Peter Cox, Gianni Morbidelli third, Paolo Ruberti fourth, Pegan Anderson fifth, Tom Ferrier still in sixth place, and Ferrier 3/4 of a second behind Pegan Anderson across the line last time. That's the closest gap in the field. He's now some 10 seconds ahead of Toby Massini, and off goes Norman Seaman. Seaman, who was penalised, stop-and-go penalty for punting one of his rivals into touch, now also goes off. And David, that's a straightforward lose. Got too fast into the first turn and away it went. Now, probably not so much too fast as a little wide off the line at this stage of the afternoon, I would think.
I think he was a little bit late turning in there and got it onto the dirty part of the circuit, and the back end of the car got away from him. And then it was spinning, but I noticed it was very slow to get onto the brakes to slow it down while the car's still on a tarmac. These cars with the slick racing tyres do have a fair amount of grip, and the quicker you can get onto the brakes while you're still on tar, the more chance you've got of stopping. The minute it hits the grass, unfortunately, there's little or no adhesion on grass compared to with rubber. So to try and keep out of the gravel traps, the quicker you're on the brakes, the better. He was a little bit slow there, and unfortunately, he's made the gravel trap, and the car's got beached, and there it sits.
Well, even after his stop and go, he had worked himself back up to 8th, but he's undone all of that good work. Here again, we see Tom Ferrier, 6th place, chasing Pagan Anderson. Now it'll be interesting to go on board and listen to these cars all the way down the straight. Ferrier closing again on Pagan. 3/4 of a second to pass at the line last time. It's less this time, 2 to go as they come to the line. Heisman leads after 16 of 18 laps from Cox, Morbidelli, Roberti, and then this battle. Well, certainly no sign of Ferrier's car springing a leak in any department at the moment, but he just can't get close to Pagan Anderson on power, and it's probably just as well he didn't there, because if he had been lining up down the inside of the first corner, yellow flags would have been out, because the diggers were there digging Norman Seaman's car out of harm's way and pulling it to safety. So here is our race leader, Duncan Heisman, his brother Patrick, now 4 times, or is it 5 times, the Porsche Super Cup champion. And Heisman, the younger of the pair, raced in the Super Cup for a couple of seasons, and now finding his feet in this European Super Production Championship. He's lapping just a fraction slower than Peter Cox, only 0.3 of a second slower on the last lap, so Cox got the gap down from 4.2 to 3.9 seconds. But David, even if Cox was right up his exhaust for the last lap and a little bit, I can't imagine that he would be easily able to find a way past Heisman. These two have got the measure of each other at the moment. They know that there's going to be no easy overtaking between them.
No, we've seen that in the past. They've had the last 2 meetings where they had their comers together, and certainly if they were that much closer, it might make it more exciting for us as they're watching, as they're swapping paint or knocking wing mirrors off or whatever. But certainly they're very, very close. You can just see in the background the yellow flags waving there. Obviously still trying to get the number 2 car of Norman Seaman out of the gravel. But pretty much set at 3.5 seconds basically between the cars. Cox a little bit quicker again on that lap, but then again Duncan has to drive a controlled race at the moment. He knows he's got a good little lead over Peter Cox, and as long as he keeps that and gets to the finish without making any mistakes, that's all he needs to do to score maximum points yet again and extend his lead in this, the Super Production Championship.
Half a lap to go for Duncan Heisman, who has led from the front of the grid, pole position. Gianni Morbidelli, the fastest man in practice, and Paolo Roberti, who was almost equally quick in the CBME cars, courtesy of engine change after qualifying before the race, both starting from the back of the grid. They're now 3rd and 4th, but Morbidelli being dropped by these two for some while. Mid-stages of the race, they just picked the pace up again, and Morbidelli's CBME car just couldn't respond. So Heisman's Carly Motorsport team are ready and waiting for him at the line. Just 3 or 4 more corners to go. Peter Cox again getting closer by a fraction here. Can see that he is a little closer all the time. But Heisman has this one nicely under control. Cox flies through the back chicane, but up through the last couple of corners, Duncan Heisman has control of the race, as he has done all the way from the start, unchallenged almost since the first corner, when he got a good start, but perhaps not the perfect one. It was good enough, though, to see him into turn 2 in the lead, and now 18 laps later, Duncan Heisman takes the checkered flag to win here at Budapest at the Hungaroring. Another victory for Heisman, another victory for a Dutchman. I may be wrong, but I believe that nobody other than a Dutchman has won so far this year. Gianni Morbidelli in 3rd place, Paolo Roberti here in 4th, Pagan Anderson 5th, and Tom Ferrier 6th place. Could have been 5th perhaps. He had a couple of good looks at Anderson, but no disgrace, he did a very good job indeed. Now, having said Gianni Morbidelli came across the line in 3rd, he didn't, because I thought the cameras hadn't picked him up and had gone straight to Roberti, but it's Roberti who's 3rd. Gianni Morbidelli has gone off on the last lap, so it's Roberti 3rd, Anderson 4th, Ferrier 5th, Toby Massini in 6th place. What a phenomenal last result in the Super Production Championship race here. Victory for Heisman again over Cox. Well, Duncan Iceman does it again, David Leslie, and that brings the end to our Super Racing weekend, really. We are at the end of a mammoth broadcast for us. I hope you've enjoyed it sitting there at home. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for watching. Thank you very much as well to the hundreds of you who have sent us emails. We've tried to answer as many of them and as varied of them as we can. If we didn't give you a name check, I hope we managed to answer some of your questions. August 28th now, the A1 Ring, the next race, a long time away from now, and plenty of time for the drivers to cogitate and contemplate. The FIA GT Championship looking more and more like a benefit for the Lavra competition team, but they've all got to go to Spa first, the GT cars, for the 24 hours. Tough breaks for Jamie Campbell, Walter and Lister, but David, all in all, I think a great day's racing.
Absolutely fantastic. These people with the Viper winning their father and son, fantastic.